It begins in a tranquil corner of the world. Someone called out to Shinya, asking what he was doing there. An elderly man appeared in front of him, his voice carrying an ironic edge, wondering why the young man was staring so intently into the void. And then, as Shin looked straight ahead, a realization struck him. It was his father standing there. Sensing this, the man reached out and gently placed a hand on the boy's head. A fleeting thought crossed his mind. Did his own son really not recognize him? But the man chose not to dwell on it. He asked Shinya to help pull the net from the water to see what the day's catch might be. He also promised to show his son some special techniques later on. Shin, still not entirely sure what was happening, quickly agreed and hurried over, eager to help. About half an hour passed, and they were already out in the boat. His father pulled in the net with impressive strength. But in the end, only a single humble crab was caught. Nevertheless, they eventually caught some fish, and soon his father was grilling up a delicious dish of fried fish. As they sat down to eat, the man suddenly choked, and his son gave him a gentle pat on the back to help him recover. The day drew to a close, and they went to the tree to honor the time they had spent together. The sun was setting, and the lad, with his father, sat in the boat looking at the last glimmers of light. He involuntarily looked in the direction where a swimming fish had appeared out of nowhere. Seeing a red carp flickering in the water, the lad mentally set out to catch it, as if hoping for a lucky break. And then, without hesitation, he jumped into the water in an attempt to catch up with this rare creature. Diving beneath the surface, he slowly swam down, hoping to spot the carp. But in the deep water, he only wondered where the fish had disappeared to. No other fish could be seen in the water. While in the water column, the man felt something disturbing. Suddenly his body stopped obeying, not a single muscle moved. He tried to call out to his father, but there was only silence in response. Hours passed and night descended on the lake, leaving the boat drifting lonely. Up to this very moment the lad did not move, until suddenly he opened his eyes, calling out to his father. Instead of answering, strangers appeared in front of him. They watched him, as if they couldn't believe he was awake. The guy looked around and realized he was tied up. The realization was inescapable. One of the strangers questioned where his father was, which made the other guy even more confused. One of them later said, speaking to his companion, that it was ridiculously easy to lure the victim into the water. The real reason he was pushed into the lake, however, was hunting. They were looking for a certain spirit beast. As the dive got deeper, he noticed that the guards were guarding him the whole time. When he woke up, the man began to wonder, was it possible that everything he had experienced was just a dream? Only now the memory began to return, and the guy realized it had been a month since his arrival in this world. The previous bearer of his body had died of a strange ailment, and the boy found himself in his place. The situation was aggravated by the fact that the mother died immediately after the birth of the previous owner of the body. My father, on the other hand, passed away just 3 months ago, unable to cope with the cold. Still, the young man kept his feelings for his family deep in his heart. Now those emotions were rising to the surface, but there was no way his old life could have prepared him for this new world. In this new place, after being reborn, he faced betrayal from Zhang, who used him as bait. When he first got here a month ago, the guy realized that the world was saturated with strange energy and supernatural powers. People who possessed such powers had special abilities. They were not called mages, but rather martial artists. Moreover, not only humans could evolve by cultivating, beasts also possessed this ability. At that very moment, one such beast approached, and the guy exclaimed that he had located a target. This remark caught the old man's attention, and he shouted that he had found a water monster. The hero turned around, and I saw a strange shadow under the water. As soon as that one slipped beneath the surface, out popped the crocodile. When the man came face to face with the beast, terror seized him, for he had heard that the beast was only waist-high. But now, looking at it, it was clear, the beast was unimaginably large. It was so huge that it threw the boat off at the first blow. The boy barely had time to dodge the attack. But the monster didn't back down, rushing forward again. It was impossible to retreat. The hero had been waiting for this moment to test the strength he had accumulated over the years. He had finally reached a level that allowed him to use the most powerful technique. As he prepared to strike, the man wondered if the monster could withstand the force of 10 years of practice. But the monster did not retreat. On the contrary, it opened its mouth and rushed forward. Seeing the size of the mouth, the guy instantly bounced away. With that, The crocodile split the boat in two and pulled the fighter with it. The other wreckage contained an old man and a young man. The old man said he couldn't die like that. The hero turned around, realizing that something bad was happening. He saw the old man pull out a knife and stabbed it into the palm of the protagonist's hand. Whereupon the hero instinctively unhooked himself from the boat and found himself in the water. Once in the water, he realized his whole body was tied up, he was powerless. Nevertheless, he struggled to bite the ropes with his teeth. But the blood from the wound on his arm attracted the crocodile's attention, and the crocodile began to approach. The monster was moving at an alarming speed, and there was almost no chance of getting out. Already losing consciousness, he heard a voice calling his name. "Sure, don't fall asleep." Opening his eyes, he saw his father reaching for him from the boat. In that moment, the boy thought, "Is this for real?" Their hands were already on their way to each other. He reached for the outstretched hand, and a few seconds later was holding on to a wooden splinter. Soon, climbing higher, he was able to catch his breath and feel his footing. Only then did he realize this was the very boat he and his father had built together. But even on this scrap of surviving wood, something strange was happening. Something imperceptible grabbed his leg and pulled him down. And that something turned out to be the crocodile, squeezing its victim with renewed vigor. This time it was different. If he'd managed to surface last time, things were different now. The monster was clawing at his leg. Dragged to the bottom, he mentally apologized to his father for not being able to save himself. He tried. He did everything he could. But now he was at the bottom. At the bottom of the lake, the crocodile let him go. And in that instant they came face to face. The monster opened its jaws again, lunging at him. Believing the end had come, the guy just closed his eyes. But then something awakened inside him, a strange sensation, as if a new power was budding. Suddenly, he heard the voice of the system announcing that this guy was now able to activate it. And eventually he managed to awaken the power of water control. And the scene changes to show a guy intently observing the sight before him. Meanwhile, a system interface appears against the backdrop of the water surface, announcing that the man has gained a new ability, Water Monkey. At another glance at the screen, the man can't believe what he's feeling. He doesn't think he's dead. The question of whether he should have perished at the bottom of the lake or been crushed by the jaws of a huge crocodile keeps him busy. Nevertheless, the memory of the dive brings him back to reality, and he makes an attempt to move, eager to get to the surface. Suddenly he realizes that something has changed. Although his body is still underwater, the man feels as if he is floating on its surface. This feeling causes him to marvel. He raises his hand and notices the shining inscription in front of him. The ability to control water has been successfully activated. With this power, the man is also amazed that he can now breathe freely underwater. In addition, all the wounds on his body instantly healed. And as he looks at his healed reflection, he feels an invisible presence behind him. Suddenly the man turns around, where he again spots a huge crocodile with its mouth open, ready to swallow him whole. Haunted by fear, the guy reflexively closes his eyes and reaches forward. After a moment, however, he realizes his previous instincts aren't working. When he opens his eyes, a still water field created by his will appears before him. Perhaps this whole miracle is a gift from the system. Looking at the screen again, he feels a resemblance to the superpowers of the comic book heroes that they gained after being reborn. However, in the underwater realm, he is now free from any restraints. The man realizes he could have taken control of this monster, but decides to wait it out, watching the events unfold. Suddenly the water prison around the crocodile dissolves, and he realizes the creature's control time is limited. Once free, the beast rushes towards the man, opening its jaws in an attempt to swallow him. But the hero uses the crocodile's mouth as a springboard and slams it down and pushes off to the side. Being underwater for long periods of time is still unaccustomedly difficult for him. However, the man feels that he has not yet taken full advantage of the power's possibilities. He wonders if it is possible to completely subdue this creature. And then the system shows itself again, offering the dominant skill. The ancient ruins say that this blood symbol is activated through the blood of the wearer and is capable of enslaving anyone. The man studies the description and realizes that the skill promises incredible possibilities and decides to dig deeper into the system. But there is no time for reflection. The crocodile already reappears beneath him, ready to deliver a fatal blow. Standing still and with no other options, the hero decides to try out a new power. And this is the most opportune moment. The monster is very close by. The guy's activating water control. The first step is to try to subdue the beast. After triggering the ability, the crocodile freezes for a few moments, allowing the man to come closer. With each breath, the beast struggled to resist, and the hero forms a talisman in his hands, who carefully places it on the crocodile's head. Immediately afterward, the creature tries with all its might to throw off the foreign object, but the hero clings tenaciously to the talisman, drawing on a formidable spiritual resource. At one point, the man notices bloody marks protruding from his eyes, and realizes that the limits of his powers may be overcome. Before his doubts can get the better of him again, images of his former life come to mind. These fragments give the boy a burning desire to survive. He is determined that a mere crocodile will not break his spirit. The command uttered by the will, obey, fills him with power again. However, the skill's running time is rapidly dwindling. As night falls on the other side of the lake, the man is no longer where he was before, leaving the shaky water. He feels genuine joy at being alive. But as soon as he steps ashore, a crocodile swims up to him. Before the hero can do anything, he realizes the monster is finally subdued. In gratitude for his control, the man gives the beast a name, Liang. The system immediately gives out a status. This is not a simple aquatic creature, but a magical one capable of evolution. However, the hero decides not to take Liang with him to the village and leaves him in the lake. After cementing a spiritual bond with the animal, he gives the command to disappear, and the crocodile dissolves into the depths. Convinced of Liang's disappearance, the man gets to his feet and chooses a way forward. Now he needs to go home, get a bite to eat and rest after so many trials. As he recoils, the scene shifts back to Liang, leaving the lake on a set route. Following him, the beast comes out to a cave by the water and there stays to rest. The next dawn, people call Zhang after them, and along comes a familiar fellow accompanying the butler. They move forward, and the watchers note with bated breath the arrival of the Zhang family representatives at the Sure house. This family had long been surrounded by rumors and was considered a source of trouble, and talking about them was considered bad form. As the man walks past the people, he notices that Shay was once again in a bind. However, the scene immediately shifts its gaze to the door of Sher's house. At this time, the old man whispers that after Liang's death, the treasure will become available to the hero. It was probably planned to make up for the failure of the mission due to Zhang's weakness. Walking up to the door, the guy smashes the lock with one blow of his hoof. After that, everyone enters the house and calls for the butlers. As the man crosses the threshold, his gaze falls on the one who was thought to be dead, the son who has shown forth alive and unharmed. But bewilderment reigns all around. How did he survive and why did he end up here? Sure, waking up from her confusion, unable to comprehend what was happening. He is only at a loss, unable to unravel the reason for his encounter with this hero. But then the scene shifts, showing an old man letting out a scream and pointing in the direction of the stranger. The old man watches the young man's actions with bewilderment, amazed at how he managed to survive after all the trials. Later, the mentor experiences an inner impulse of remorse, recognizing in his mind that Liang Shi himself was standing in front of him. Liang Shi's name causes the man to be genuinely amazed as he did not expect to meet him alive. Liang Shi had always been a thorn in the old man's side, but now he was standing in front of him in the flesh, and it felt especially acute. For a moment, the mentor raised his hand, and then two guards grabbed the guy by the shoulders without question. Once in captivity, the young man inwardly questions himself about his reasons for being in this place and the meaning of what is happening. Soon a bald man, who once used force, appears in the crowd and by his silent presence reminds them of the order to find and capture the elusive beast. However, the search resulted in a total lack of prey, and the trappers returned with nothing. Moreover, they were responsible for the assassination of Lord Zhang, which caused serious financial losses for the entire settlement. These losses jeopardized the well-being of the villagers, breaking the thin line of peace and security. Upon hearing such conclusions, the hero objects, pointing to his own deception. The hunters set the trap themselves and kidnapped him as bait. He adds that he was only a bait designed to catch the spiritual beast, not a willing participant. However, the bald man intervenes again, claiming that he personally massacred Lord Zhang and marveling at the insolence of the man who came to the village. Combining contempt and distrust, the detractor calls the hero a monster, considering his appearance a challenge to the peace of the village. The concept of a monster comes to life in a young man's memories, reminding him of childhood hurts. The image of an orphan accused of stealing other people's belongings immediately comes to mind. Memories of taunts and mean-spirited pranks by peers. Other people's papers ended up in my backpack. And laughter was heard at every unjust accusation. These wounds of the soul the man kept long, not forgetting the pain of deceit and scorn. And so the bully approaches again, reminding them that the monster has challenged the locals to a duel, pitting their entire community against each other. However, beneath the outwardly derisive nickname, there was a deeper reason. It was not the thickness of his skin that haunted him, but the strength of spirit displayed in battle. In duels, this guy always fought without hesitation, gaining the upper hand over his opponent through determination and skill. Blow after blow, he easily laid any foe to the ground, demonstrating incredible stamina. Although his fighting techniques still needed to be honed, the man did not spare himself, entering the fray even when the odds seemed even. To prove the danger of the encounter, he broke free from the grasp of the two guards, walked a few steps, and with one swift blow struck the bald man's head. He then pushed his opponent away, causing water to splash around, and showed that the label monster takes on a new meaning. The boy focused his attention on his ability to control the water, summoning the jets above him, ready to obey his will. Meanwhile, the bald man instructs one of the villagers to transport the prisoner to a hidden base where lengthy experiments were expected. That base needed just such a person, an orphan with unusual powers, suitable for creating a mystical being. The young man, bereft of family since childhood, seemed the perfect candidate and was offered to become the adopted son of a powerful clan. Promising new status and comfort, they made it clear refusal would be punished with a broken leg. Rumors are whispered in the crowd that the children taken by this family are mysteriously disappearing, and now the next victim was to be a new puppet. Suddenly, however, the village elder stands up for the lad, quashing attempts at intimidation and proclaiming the inviolability of the locals. This elder had once almost become an adopted son of the clan, but for unknown reasons, he remained free, retaining his dignity. He blandly calls his mentor an idiot, condemning his participation in the intrigue. The old man responds with an angry objection, questioning the nature of their secret plans, and states that he remains a supporter of the Schur family. In doing so, he threatens the clan with official confrontation and promises to destroy their clan if the threat is not lifted. These words make a man think, assessing the seriousness of the conflict and the possible consequences. The elder continues by pointing out that a man of such abilities does not deserve the role of a performer, much less a humiliated participant in the events. In his opinion, any attempt to humiliate a member of the Shea family is unacceptable and offensive to the entire community. In the course of the argument, the guy, filled with irritation, calls the elder a fool and announces that his patience has run out for the day. He warns that when the information reaches the head of the Zhao clan, the previous intrigues will be a thing of the past, because the whole story began much earlier. However, barely a man leaves, as the bald man turns around and declares him as ungrateful as his father. After the chaos, the elder approaches the hero and reminds him that he saved his life at the cost of his own safety. The lad accepts this recognition with sincere gratitude and once again feels supported by the elder. Soon they leave Shay's house, and the man takes one look at the palm of his hand and realizes that such salvations may not happen again, so he should always be prepared. Clenching his fists, he feels a surge of determination, and it is at this point that his system rewards him with the loot, 0.1 essence of water. Our scene moves to a different location. In this place, he tries to connect with his pet that he managed to tame earlier, and after much trying, the water begins to move, swirling in circles. He realizes something he wanted so badly has come true. The huge crocodile he has tamed starts to show until it swims out of the water. But the moment he surfaces, he notices the size of the animal. It's not gigantic at all. He wonders what's going on. Where's my giant crocodile? And in response, the system tells you that this is one of the transformations that this crocodile is capable of doing. Moreover, with this kind of appearance, the energy it needs to consume is very low. And it turned out to be a curiosity, a resource that would surely come in handy for him in the future. But now he asks himself, where did the crocodile manage to find this water essence? He then asks the crocodile to show him the way to the place and guide him to it. And so it goes like this. The crocodile jumps into the water, and our hero follows him. Inside the lake, we see it moving forward. And in a moment, he is at the entrance to the cave. Toward this cave, he moves closer and closer. Once in the underwater grotto, he is amazed at what he sees. What he's seeing is unbelievable. Looking closer, he realizes that these plants below are legendary spiritual herbs. And he touches one of them, infused with the legendary essence. The system recognizes it as a plant with a legendary essence that you can absorb yourself. For this world is full of spiritual materials and treasures that can be absorbed, and then they are transformed into extraordinary energies. Plants with these special properties are better known as specialty herbs. And the legend speaks of a lake deep within Zhao's domain. And in the bowels of the mansion grow unique lilies found only there. And Master Zhao uses them to attract cultivators and turn them into his novices. But now, possessing such an abundant legendary essence down here, he wondered how much he could gather for himself. And while he's thinking about it, he turns to the crocodile to see if he wants to help our hero. However, he notices that the animal is not at all eager to help, but prefers to rest. Realizing that he was being lazy, he collects the essence on his own. After a while, he leaves the lake. On the shore, we see him holding this legendary spiritual essence in his hand. After examining it, he takes a bite. The system records that this essence is recognized. It can improve the evolution of his control of sea creatures. It also gives him points, and he realizes that the essence turned out to be delicious. He continues eating and starts getting water essence points. Half an hour later, we see him full and satiated. He's eaten all the legendary essences. After a while, the system appears and shows Liang's status, which was already good, but now indicates that the crocodile can evolve. After another moment, he discovers that the protagonist is now capable of aquatic spiritual fusion and will be able to evolve aquatic beasts. But first, it's better to work on improving your personal skills. And so he begins. After starting the procedure, we can see that he feels a surge of energy. An aura appears over him, and with this new power, he can easily handle those guys from the last fight. If he enhances the flow of water, he will be able to handle any opponent. After evolution, he adds 45 pounds, but now he needs more energy. Because as of today, he's no longer able to absorb a drop. And now the priority is to solve the family's financial problems. And you can't trust the crocodile too much. Winter is coming. And then comes the moment when the crocodile decides to hibernate. At that instant, he grabs the fish and throws it to the ground. In fact, the crocodile itself does this. It catches the small animal and thanks it. After all, thanks to this, he will be able to earn a little money by selling such fish in the market. The scene shifts again. He trades fish and gets 80 coins, a small profit. But the merchants in this world are not at all like the street shopkeepers of his former life. Here they are easy to get around. Having dealt with the water essence issue, the next step is to find the right moment to settle accounts with this Sang. And just then he shows up at the fountain, calling out to Shay and apologizing for yesterday's events. He wants to settle this once and for all and apologize humanely. He invites our hero to his ship to have dinner together. After these words, he reassures that there is nothing to worry about. There will be only the two of them there. But having reached the place, it is unlikely that the guy will be able to get out this time. Realizing the situation, our hero starts laughing and confesses that if there are two of them, he's willing to accept the offer because it's safer with two people. The scene then cuts off. Elsewhere, an old man is interrogated by this family. And in this situation, he begins to explain that the estate has recently had problems with experiments. Several people have died, and municipal materials are in catastrophic short supply. And Liang, the main character, was specially chosen for this mission. The reason is simple. The boy is an orphan, and the candidate turned out to be perfect for them. Turning around, the old man asks himself if he realizes what he's talking about. And the old man replies in the affirmative, confirming that he understands. The next day, this Liang fellow will be captured. And if that happens, Mr. Zhao promises to lavishly reward whoever helps catch him, perhaps even inducting him into the ranks of the immortals. The old man himself believes it. A smile appears on his face. But to do so, he only needs to fulfill one condition, to take part in the ritual. He states that everything he said is true. When he hears that he too can become immortal, the old man is even more enthusiastic and assures that he will accomplish the task. The old man unbuttons his shirt, showing the marks of such insane rituals on his body. at which point he exclaims that he's finally ready to get started. After these strange events, the scene shifts to the boat, where we see the protagonist again, and the old man behaving extremely calmly. He treats Shay to lunch, in a beautiful place, as if specially chosen for the occasion. But the hero is wary of paying attention. He turns around and wonders if there are other ships lurking nearby. While he's distracted, the old man drops a mysterious pill into the soup out of spite, then confesses that he had made sure in advance that no ships would interfere with their seclusion. In his imagination, he could already see Shay eating the fish soup and surviving his last hour. Will scream at the top of their lungs, but no one will hear the help. Hearing this, the hero stands up and notices that the old man's plan isn't bad either. He wonders what Shay is really up to. Suddenly something comes close to his face, is glued to his skin. As soon as that happens, he starts screaming. But soon his scream is cut short. He realizes that it was just water on his face, and gasping for air is ridiculous. A moment later, he loses consciousness. The only thing he has time to see is the hero bending over him. A few hours pass. Night falls, and the old man comes to his senses. Upon waking up, he notices that he's still on the boat, but now tied up. Bound, he begins to scream, and yet sees the hero in front of him, joyfully welcoming his awakening. Now waking up, the old man guesses the next step, but doesn't realize what exactly happened. In his hand, he discovers something important, by his standards, of real value. This item was given to him by Mr. Zhao himself, and it was now worth at least double the price of the ones from before. After showing it to the hero, the old man asks to at least listen to his explanation. After all, there was a logical reason for everything. But the hero doesn't want to listen and interrupts him with a question. Doesn't he recognize the place? The old man instantly realizes where he is. This is where they were trying to catch the very monster in the water. Haunted by fear, he realizes that his fate is sealed and tries to escape. But right behind the boat comes this monster, a huge crocodile. The old man freezes in horror. In front of him is the very water beast he was so afraid of. To make matters worse, the hero notices that this monster was formerly a real monster that lived in the lake, but has now become his pet. Now the old man realizes he is not a man, but a being far more sinister. He begs not to be torn apart, even banging his head against the side of the boat, but the hero remains emotionless. Then Guy asks other questions. Why was Butler Ren so eager to bring him to the mansion? Why is the family now recruiting so many servants? And the old man begins the story that all the abductees here were considered just material for the creation of immortal pills. They had to be killed to obtain the elixir of immortality. He admits that many innocent people were victimized by his actions, but he was only following orders. Otherwise, he says, the old man himself would have been in the place of these unfortunates. To himself, he thinks to himself that this low-life bastard will soon be worthless when the Zhao family comes up. As soon as they arrive, the hero will be turned into pearls and will wish for death himself. After the old man said this, Lian takes a stone and swings it at his grandfather. Now all we see instead is a crack in the screen and red liquid. The boy realizes that he's been watched all this time. Soon his own animal nature awakens in him. He purposefully sent the old man to the other world. Otherwise, the old man would almost certainly have died in the mansion, and he would have to kill him here and now. But leaving him on the shore was a bad idea, and the hero throws the old man into the lake to the crocodile. He then takes the boat, turns around and sails off in a different direction, thinking it's time to find a stronger pet. When he leaves, the scene shifts back under the water, and there we see the old man. At this point, he begins to be affected by the consequences of what he took at the beginning of the chapter, the so-called immortality, which, believe me, is not a gift at all, but a curse. But the scene abruptly cuts off, and the action is postponed to another day. Over the water surface of the lake, a seagull suddenly chooses to land a space right in the standing boat. On this boat, the bird encounters a stranger whose hand is grasped from the water, whereupon the gull soars away. After a few minutes, it turns out that the man was the protagonist himself, who had set sail on a boat with his motionless companion, a crocodile. Now the guy realizes, having an unusual power in this world makes it possible to do difficult things with ease. As he does so, the man notices that it has been 3 days since he sent the old man over the edge of routine. In order not to cause unnecessary questions, the hero is forced to play the role of a simple fisherman. To the others, he told them that the old man had simply disappeared, having left him the boat before. However, loved ones will not let such an event slip from their sight. Because Ban Zhang's disappearance will inevitably create rumors, and those rumors are likely to fall on the guy. Nevertheless, the first priority for a man is to learn martial arts as soon as possible. And in Pingyang there are 3 schools, among which the strongest is considered to be the Yang clan under the leadership of Marshal Hao. Rumors say that the head of the Yans is able to cut even the king in 2 and break the stone with his bare hands, thanks to which he keeps his supremacy. If successful, the Zhao family will stop annoying the man, and even if they try, they won't dare to even touch him with a finger. The disappearance of a student of the school would be a serious drama for its reputation, but the obstacle is hidden in the amount of the entrance fee. The tuition reaches 5 to 8 lanums, while a man's account is only 2 lanums and 8 reis. At this moment, the crocodile resting on the boat begins to pick up some thoughts, which makes the man realize that the animal also perceives his inner world, so he tries not to think about the future. Soon the guy notes that his body is slowly but surely adapting to the new environment after the last update. Regardless of everything that was going on, the man heads onward on his fishing trip. In the clear water column, the hero notices that his awakened power allows him to glide underwater much more swiftly. In the depths, he calls the crocodile to race underwater, using this as a training exercise. The crocodile seemed to accept the challenge. And then a new technique appeared under the fisherman's feet. The torrent of water constricts to the limit, and then pushes him forward with a clatter. Thus there is a swift dash into the depths of the lake, but such maneuverability drains stamina. No lake dweller can keep up with that speed. Until a pink fish comes into view. The guy does not immediately understand what is happening, and then realizes that before him is a mystical creature. In this world, there are already species capable of evolution through a unique power. Larga, Garg, and March are known for being able to reach the mystic stage. However, now 2 mystical fish appeared in front of the protagonist at once, which is considered extremely rare. The man aims to catch both in an instant. As soon as the thought of grabbing is formalized in the mind, the fish fly sharply in different directions. The hero directs the crocodile to one of them, and himself rushes after the second. The crocodile shifts into animal form, picking up speed, and together they're in pursuit. After a long chase, the man regrets not having a fishing net. Without it, you have to use your strength again, which undermines your stamina even more. He activates the flow control technique again, getting a powerful push to keep the fish from swimming away. Soon a water sphere is created around the pursued, keeping the fish trapped. And in that instant the guy makes a dash forward and grabs his prey, completely satisfied with the result. But he barely holds the trophy in his hands, as pressure was felt behind his back, as if a mysterious dragon had appeared at the moment of catching a legendary fish. But the hero is not about to let go of his catch. To save his life and avoid the wrath of the Zhao family, the fish must remain in his hands. But the savvy little protagonist doesn't notice anything around him, and a monster appears behind his back. Something appears behind him, rapidly moving its tail or maybe whiskers, twirling the protagonist. The guy then feels the pressure. He's being pulled back. As soon as he is pulled away, he realizes, what was it that attacked him? There was a giant fish in front of him. But the power of this fish was so great that our hero flew with force to the very bottom of this lake. And at that moment, after falling down, it pops back up to the top, where he now realizes that the monster was closer than before to our protagonist. At a closer look, he is startled by the size of the monster and wonders what it was. He even recalls a rumor that at the bottom of this lake lives a carp with 6 whiskers, which attacks unsuspecting people. He ends up in the center of the lake, and he's incredibly lucky, our protagonist, who just ran into such a powerful monster. Our hero realizes that the monster is preparing a new attack. A sphere of water bubbles appears in its mouth, flying towards our hero. But we see the protagonist raise his palm and apply water control a few moments later. He ends up dispelling the very attack that the monster was directing in his direction. This pleased him greatly, for the underwater attacks gave him the advantage of being much faster. But fending off one attack is only half the battle. And at that moment, the carp swims right up to him and starts attacking our protagonist. We see the carp facing the protagonist, staring intently as she moves her whiskers, about to strike the protagonist. With his whiskers, he tries to grab it. But before she can grab it, our crocodile appears. The hero, saving the protagonist, throws that mustache back. At the same time, he hits the monster in the face with his tail, throwing it backwards. Now he observes the catfish's actions further. Pushing the monster away, he moves forward towards it. With his incredibly strong claws, he grabs the carp at the bottom of the lake. After all this, the protagonist congratulates his pet. However, staying where he is could have missed his chance, so he gets up. This is his moment. Getting closer to the carp, he activates the control seal, putting his hand to her forehead. We see the seal penetrate the carp, and notice that his mental points are now enough to subdue this carp. The system informs him that if he continues to act this way, these actions may cause a mental overload in the wearer. The system only asked him to stop, or he would die. But the hero does not stop and continues. The protagonist begins to feel the negative effects of all this. But what he wanted to do happens. He makes a connection with the monster. After some bonding time, he finally controls the monster at least a little bit. And when he gains mental control over this creature, we see a boat standing alone on the surface of the lake. A few minutes later, the protagonist climbs onto that boat. On board, he is jubilant, for he is finally back alive. After all, he hadn't expected this fat catfish to have such resilience. But here he turns around, and now, looking back, he realizes what he wished for so much. It has come true. He now has two tame creatures. One is a crocodile and the other is a catfish that has become a tame pet. The system appears. By taming the 6-eared catfish, he has unlocked evolution in the system. He chooses a name for him. The catfish is now called Chunky. The fish even liked it. Not so much the name, though, but the procedure itself. After all that had happened, he could move on to the next stage. The next step was to take out of the basket that legendary fish he had caught in the water. In another basket, however, lay another fish in the jaws of a crocodile. After realizing that the pet managed to catch it, he praises it, saying that the animal is reliable and he really enjoyed it. And on the bottom of the boat, we see a few fish now. That was a good catch. But now he takes one of the fish, the smaller, mythical one, and roasts it. After putting it on the grill and waiting a minute, all we see is the skeleton of a mythical fish. And he ends up with 18 units of water essence, plus some small horns from this fish he just caught. Logged in and realized that I had obtained 18 points of water essence, which meant the equivalent of 18 mystic lotus roots. Now that he had eaten that little fish, he noticed that it gave so much water experience that the big one must give at least twice as much. However, looking at all that catch, he thought that no, he couldn't eat it all. He needed to hold back a bit because now he needed to save up for the entry fee. And our story continues after fishing. He now heads to the mall where he can sell his catch. The place is completely packed with people. Everyone's trying to buy or sell something. Among them is the protagonist himself. He is making his way through the crowd when suddenly something catches his attention. A big bunch of people had gathered. He even thought that the celebration wasn't over yet, because people looked too happy. Out of curiosity, he comes closer and sees Shang-H selling fish classified as mythical. People stare in surprise at the fish in his hands. Only then does the protagonist realize that he too has a mythical fish, which is no less surprising. He squeezes through the crowd and the people in it notice and recognize him. Trying to squeeze through the crowd, he eventually makes it to the front row. He rejoices. Perhaps the gods of the river have really blessed him today. They both managed to catch the mythical fish. However, when he mentions the mythical fish, the gawkers behind him begin to interject what he's talking about. Isn't he crazy? After all, they only see one mythical fish. To prove his point, the protagonist pulls out of a basket the very mythical fish he caught in the river. But as soon as he shows it off, everyone around him bursts out laughing. The fish was too ugly. How can something like that be considered mythical? The crowd continues to taunt, but the protagonist is no longer paying attention. Even the other little one doesn't care anymore. Nevertheless, amidst the laughter, someone calls out to him from behind. He turns around and the guy wonders if the redfish in this man's hands is a redfish. The man asks him to wait, and the crowd freezes. This is one of the most respected instructors of the Yang clan's battle hall. Moving closer, the instructor looks curiously at the fish in the protagonist's hands, deciding whether to buy it. He asks the price, emphasizing that it should be fair. The guy calls 150 coins. As soon as he says the amount, his face lights up with joy. He is satisfied with the figure. However, just as he is about to seal the deal, the protagonist raises his fish. He calls instructor Leon to take a look at her as well. At this moment, someone in the crowd whispers to him, "Don't embarrass yourself in front of Liang. If he gets angry, the guy will get hurt." However, instructor Liang scrutinizes the fish and finds it very interesting. It's a bull less than he asks the price. The protagonist contemplates selling by weight. The price he sets may seem high, but given the fish, it is a fair price. After brief deliberation, the instructor decides to pay 325 coins. As soon as he says the amount, shock spreads through the crowd. No one can believe that this fish was worth that much wine, while the protagonist is still digesting what he's heard. Some onlookers advise him not to rejoice too soon. After all, with that kind of money, what if he loses it? But the hero ignores them and calmly states that he sells fish. Meanwhile, another merchant selling his fish quietly walks away. The protagonist approaches Liang and asks why his fish is worth so much more than a red-billed bass. In response, the instructor explains that the horns of bullhead fish are used in medicine. They are used to make pills that greatly enhance cultivation. And fish are just at the stage when the horns are especially valuable. Upon hearing this, the protagonist is ecstatic, remembering that the first time he went fishing he had saved one of these antlers. The deal is done, and he leaves. As the day draws to a close, the protagonist sits down in a quiet corner to count the coins. But just at that moment someone appears, a shadow behind him. It's Libo. A guy approaches the protagonist and says he's glorifying their town. The protagonist, however, replies that what merit is there, he only sold the fish, and not for so much money. Since everything is like this, Libo holds out his hand and asks him to give him the money, saying that if he doesn't need it, a more needy friend could use it. But the conversation winds down, and the protagonist begins to wonder how much it costs to enter Martial Hall young. The man next to him smiles. He's just about to enroll there. His father arranged it all. Entry costs 350 yuan, exactly what he has now, but to eat and live, he'll have to shell out 500 or even 1,000. Hearing this, the protagonist starts to figure it out. With his savings, he can handle it and get in. A friend is ready to leave, promising to meet the next day. But suddenly someone's voice comes out, saying he'd already gone in there to find another mythical fish. However, the scene is changing. Elsewhere, a mysterious man shows up and says that bastard Ben Jiang is missing. All they found was a lead on a guy named Lian Shi. He's been sent to settle this alone, and he doesn't want to hear another word about the case. With a serious face, the man waits in the gloom. Later that night, a man was in a boat having dinner, while his faithful pet scrutinized his every move. After eating for a while, the man finished the baked fish, enjoying a hearty dinner. Then he picked up a bowl of soup and decided to taste it. Only after that did the man realize how unusually tasty the broth was. A couple leftovers went back into the lake. Perhaps, the man thought, the pet should also share his meal and taste that flavor. After the meal, he noticed a boost in the system, a few points of water essence. The man realized that thanks to the mythical fish he ate, the accumulation of the resource was noticeably faster. His strength was growing ever stronger, and the theme needed more fish, more fish, more fish, and now the man had two mighty creatures at his disposal. However, the most important task remained pumping. A man could invest his accumulated points in improving one of his pets, and he activated the pump command without a second thought. After the upgrade, the man felt a surge of power. A dark aura spilled out from within, and the system screen displayed the basic evolution of the battle satellite. The man now realized the need to find a new companion to fight with. At the same moment, he noticed that his ability to control the water had changed, becoming much stronger. Moreover, he had inadvertently energized the essence with water from the discarded remnants, which further strengthened its power. However, 800 units of water essence will be required to further develop the pet. But what struck the man the most was the shape of the creature that could hold his attention. He wondered who could have created such a thing, or if it had grown on its own. From where he stood, one part of the pattern resembled a dragon and the other part resembled a giant ape. As the man looked closer, he noticed other silhouettes. But that was immaterial now, for he clenched his fists, feeling a new power within him. Tomorrow the man intends to go to the Minar Marshal's Hall, where he expects to become even stronger. Night gave way to a new day, and we saw a man and his friend in a carriage. They were having fun discussing their plans for the future. During the conversation, the comrade suddenly pointed into the distance, drew the man's attention to something conspicuous. Finally, they reached their destination, a spacious university complex. After crossing the gates of the city, the men strolled around, admiring the architecture and the busy streets. Along the way, they paused for a taste of local delicacies. Having eaten here and there, they lingered at the site, where they assessed the endurance of the athletes being tested. Soon, however, the scene changed. In a remote house, hidden behind heavy curtains, a mysterious man waited for the hunted man to appear. The mysterious observer turned to the satellite and confirmed the readiness of the operation. The man hidden in the shadows learned that the hero had earned an impressive amount of money from selling the mythical fish to the Liang family, and it promised a huge profit. Even the sale of the property would not have yielded such funds, and this fact fit perfectly into their plans. Therefore, an elaborate scenario was developed, but one of the participants hesitated until further motivated. Gradually, they approached the block of Marshall's Hall, confident of the success of the infiltration. After a short time, they fell silent when they saw the two boys. Meanwhile, the man's friend wondered how many opponents the hero would be able to defeat once his training was complete. The man himself preferred not to bring such reasoning out loud, for he had underestimated his strength until now. However, on the way forward, a group of strangers suddenly appeared. Only when they appeared in front of the man did he realize that he had met these same people again, but now they were demanding money. Acting arrogant, the strangers laid down two conditions. The man could either give the demanded amount and leave, or refuse, in which case he would be beaten and then all the funds would be taken away. Despite wanting to use his finances for other purposes, the man decided not to part with the money. If strangers were so hungry for wealth, let them try to take it away by force. After the guy uttered these words, the interlocutors declared that the man was already almost dead, and everyone moved towards the hero. However, as he ducked, the man managed to deliver a powerful fist blow to the face of one of the attackers, knocking him to the ground. Barely had the blow finished, another figure appeared behind him, attempting to grab the man, but the hero's speed proved elusive. The reaction allowed the man to drive an elbow right into his opponent's face. Collapsing unconscious, the thief found himself in the hands of the hero, who, not confused, grabbed him by the hair, but it didn't end there. With a strong jerk, the man picked up the defeated man and hurled him at his opponent standing in front of him. The one who received the sudden blow, frozen in shock and fear, did not expect the guy to take down the tough fighter in one fell swoop. The frightened opponent tried to escape, but to no avail, the man was already standing in front of him and preparing a new technique. The next powerful blow brought the enemy's face crashing into the ground with force. A male friend watching the fight noted the incredible speed of the movements. The man himself looked at his palm and was amazed at how much his physical abilities had increased in such a short time. A comrade standing behind him wondered how the hero was able to gain such impressive strength in a matter of moments. In that instant, the man truly seemed superior to any martial artist. Searching for excuses, the hero thought that a higher power was to blame, his own status as a genius. Not wanting to linger on the reasoning, the man urged his friend to hurry up and continue on his way. Upon leaving the scene, the hero noticed that his friend's face remained preoccupied, but paid no attention to it. The scene abruptly changed. The next meeting took place at a different location, where the young man met Xiang. After introducing himself and asking to be called Senior Xiang, the new acquaintance received the hero's consent. Senior Xiang then offered to go with them, assuring that he would guide the lad and his companion to the experienced teacher. Walking through the corridors of the academy, Senior Xiang introduced them to the one who was to teach them martial techniques. The man's gaze froze. In front of him stood a man he had met before, the same one from the marketplace. The instructor instantly recognized the hero and came closer, ready to assess the reason for their visit. It turned out that it was the man-fish that the instructor had acquired earlier and helped cultivate that came from this guy. The pleasantly surprised teacher informed them that they would now be able to practice under his supervision, and the hall would remain open at night for recreation. The news was received with gratitude. Both the hero and his friend bowed in appreciation. Soon the instructor asked the man to accompany him to the lab to test his natural talent, which greatly puzzled the hero. It soon became clear that this analysis was necessary to determine the optimal path of development in the martial arts. This was new to the hero. He barely understood the intricacies of cultivation and asked a lot of questions. The teacher explained the key stages of martial arts, divided into 4 stages: skin, flesh, bone, and finally blood. The first step, the skin barrier, provides incredible skin strength and greatly increases protection. The second stage is advanced flesh, which allows a person to be lifted with one arm. The third stage, the bone barrier, unleashes a colossal force capable of shattering stone with a single blow. The final stage is the blood barrier, which is a complete enhancement similar to silk embroidery, making the body more powerful and enduring. However, any growth sooner or later reaches its limit. The average person can reach the maximum but not surpass it. It took special medical techniques, and special potions. The instructor mentioned these techniques, naming the 3 clan techniques that provided the transition to the next level. But what are the potions? According to the teacher, using the right medication gives the steps needed to move forward. It is on such remedies that the path of combat enhancement is built. Drugs act as catalysts in this process. Such combat healing tools include the mythical hero fish, which can greatly accelerate evolution. However, there was no need to hurry. To reach the pinnacle of martial prowess, one must go through all the stages in succession. Taking the teacher's advice, the lad thanked him and withdrew. At the back of the hallway, students were whispering. They may be looking at the legendary recruit in front of them. A cocky young man appeared behind him, who declared his intention to get rid of the hero in order to fulfill his dream. After that, the scene changed again. The servant was saying that Orphan Liang was 15 years old, and that his body represented a perfect resource. The guy had an unusual gift. If his substance was extracted, a lot of things could be done. Lord Zhao appears in this scene, noting that Yuan Heir had been extremely weak since childhood, and now finding a pearl to restore his strength seemed almost impossible. The man then wonders if Lian is the perfect material he has long dreamed of. However, it was clear from the report that this guy had already been given a healing pill and had enrolled in a martial arts university, denying opponents the ability to act without risk. Any attempt to confront this young man now required the utmost caution. So the servant on business. Eventually, the paper held in the man's hand falls to the ground. An observer lurking in the shadows notices the document and realizes it could interfere with his plans. Those who tried to obtain the eternal divine elixir are ultimately doomed to perish. The action then shifts to another location where the guy, seeing the quality of the protagonist's bones, freezes in a daze. The man had no idea of such a talent and becomes enveloped in anger, while the hero merely states that it is an innate trait and walks away. He is offered to stay, but the young man is too eager to find the training room. Moving forward, the kid meets another young man. This is Qin Han, who, having appeared in front of the hero, Guy inquires as to the purpose of the visit, for which he is here. He could have been headed anywhere, and the two begin to study each other closely, preparing for a possible fight. Before the situation has time to escalate, the protagonist shows up and stops all hostility. Now the protagonist asks Ji about the reason for his presence. He turns out to be about 2 years older than Gigi. However, the protagonist doesn't pay much attention to this and wonders why Dai is here. Dai replies that he aspires to become stronger and has invested heavily in his training. He finally managed to embark on the path of martial arts. And, once at the university, the Gigi invites him to join an open-field training session. The protagonist's friend hesitates. But the scene changes again. In the next shot, we see several students practicing hard. They are showing great results. While the protagonist's partner is quickly exhausted, and the protagonist himself experiences serious difficulties. After the grueling exercises, the instructor appears and suggests they take a break. Resting under a sprawling cedar tree, the protagonist's comrade looks completely exhausted. The students wonder how others manage to practice for so long, but during the pause, a background character emerges from the shadows. Suddenly, the pungent smell of fish comes, drawing the attention of everyone present. The guy glances forward and notices 3 new recruits. Tired of their presence, one of them declares that if they want to study, they will have to pay daily. According to him, the payment will avoid further prosecutions. Barely uttering this, the protagonist's comrade jumps up, intending to do something about it. However, the protagonist's bro stops him, convincing him not to confront the background warriors. Meanwhile, the protagonist calmly observes and realizes that he cannot defeat these fighters with his current level of strength, and that they will likely gain the upper hand. The kid keeps shaking them down with all his might. The main character wishes they were in the water at a time like this. We see 2 novice fighters shaking with fear and anger. Before the situation reaches a fight, a voice comes from the rear asking what Wan Kai is doing here. Because he is inactive, he is punished by standing still for 3 hours without being able to move. Then the heavy-set young man declares that cowards have no place here as long as they get in the way of the rest of us. The instructor encourages everyone to obey and go serve their sentence. From behind the group, a fellow protagonist points his fingers and demands that they remove themselves. Meanwhile, the protagonist's brother asks him not to interfere, as the opponents have already turned their backs. On the other hand, the protagonist ponders how to strengthen his power, realizing that he won't hold it for long. So he asks his brother to watch his place on the field, as he himself is going to get some rest. Leaving, the protagonist's partner wonders where the protagonist is headed. Everyone remains puzzled as to his intentions. When the protagonist is already running down the path, the scene reverts back to the comrade, who is walking with a calm stride. He ponders where the protagonist might have disappeared to. It's been over an hour, and he still hasn't returned. The other suggests that the hero has his own reasons and purpose, perhaps related to preparation for the upcoming battle. Irritated, the young man turns around and sternly warns not to ask questions unnecessarily. But something pisses him off again, and he prepares for another confrontation. They are interrupted by a familiar voice, however, and both turn in his direction. Opponents continue to claim they can engage the two of them in battle. But they notice that without the presence of a senior instructor, the case loses its edge. As soon as the mentor comes into view, the fighters are frustrated, but it seems that the punishment of the newcomers is not over yet. Today's escape attempt will end in failure for them. Our story continues long after that event, on a completely calm lake. Beneath the surface, we can see the crab minding its own business. But right in the middle of it, we see the protagonist gliding through the water riding two of his pets. This sight is slightly frightening to the crab. Deeper into it, the hero notices that his two pets are quite strong. However, they still asked him for help. It could mean that there was something much stronger than his two pets in this lake. To check it out for himself, he dives deeper and deeper. Eventually, he reaches a certain spot and, upon arriving, is surprised to find several interesting objects at the bottom of the lake. Without paying attention to them, he notices tracks on the bottom near these objects. The beast that was here was huge. At that very second, the protagonist's two pets find themselves in a precarious position. He doesn't understand why, until suddenly something appears right in front of him. However, he also notes that after eating that fish earlier, he has gained some synchronization rates, which have now reached 11%. Because of this, he can now control certain water monsters. He also developed long-range perception, allowing him to sense approaching danger a meter away. He's going white. Right in front of him stands an incredibly powerful monster. He wonders what kind of creature it is. Upon closer inspection, he realizes that it looks like a crab. However, this crab is incredibly huge, especially compared to its pets. A creature of this size could even possess some level of consciousness. However, he doesn't seem too strong. Otherwise, the protagonist would be trembling with fear by now. Since he can still move, he turns to the crocoboy, looking for an escape route if things go south. But then he stops to think. He wants to fight this monster. He clutches his weapon, remembering the words of those who had already judged him, calling him a monster. He remembers the old elder On, who condemned his father, and others who deemed him unworthy of existence in this territory. Now, after hearing all those voices in his head, he makes a decision. He can't just give up. After all, he's been on the brink of death 1,000 times before. If he doesn't go forward and face this monster, he will never get stronger. He refuses to surrender, not only out of a desire for power, but because this immense power is now within his reach. Going back to the beginning, the old man tried to take the protagonist's life, but he ended up dying himself. With a more serious expression on his face, the protagonist stands up. His face is full of determination. He asks the crab if the crab is going to take his leg for himself. His two pets rush towards the crab, rushing past it. As soon as they come forward, the protagonist orders them to attack, not wanting to miss this chance. He joins the attack, trying to collide with the monster. But our scene suddenly shifts to a different place. There he is slapped in the face and flies to the ground. After getting up, he walks over and asks where his other friend is gone. He wants to talk too. Otherwise, he won't back down. But the man, unaware of the protagonist's existence, simply picks up a brick from the ground and hits him in the face with it. Still, he's nobody's guide. Annoyed by that, the protagonist grabs his leg, stands up and steps on his face. Now infuriated, he and his companions finally get what they wanted. If their opponent truly wishes to die, they will make sure that wish comes true. He orders the two men to stand guard, for there was not a single man from the gang who had come to interrupt TRS. He stood by and only acquiesced. He will make sure that no leaves fall nearby. The protagonist, who didn't belong to a gang at all, his friend, knowing that here is going to beat him up, stands up. He prepares a fist punch to test his luck and strikes his enemies in the face. But in the end, his punch doesn't go too well as the guy catches it with just his fist. He then twists his arm, putting him in a very defenseless position. Now, unable to do anything about it, he can only feel the pain as the background character continues to say something. However, he grabs the other man's head, then notices how sharp his eyesight is. He likes it, so he's doing him a favor by plucking those eyes out. He then prepares two fingers and points them toward the protagonist's friend's face, while the other, lying on the ground, begs the bastard to stop, because what he was about to do was really stupid. But he ignores it completely and keeps going. His goal is to rip out a part of his body, and his finger is getting closer and closer to his skin. So when he touches them, that guy screams in pain. He's screaming and begging, "Enough." The scene shifts back inside the lake. We see a crab that managed to grab something. It wasn't the protagonist. If it was a rock, the same rock he clawed and crushed. But when he crushed that stone, the shards scattered towards the protagonist. After the first strike, he realized that destroying this crab would not be easy. After all, its shell is extremely tough. Meanwhile, a crocodile appears on the other side. The crocodile then crawls up and bites one of the crab's claws, causing the claw to become partially immobilized. And the protagonist tries to use his mental control ability to subdue the crab. But even so, he's fighting back. To help, the protagonist's second pet shows up and tries his luck too. However, the protagonist loses control of the crab's mind, and his mental energy is running low. Eventually, the control crumbles and the crab bursts from the crocodile's mouth. And soon after, he prepares an attack to hit the protagonist. He's about to hit his target, but then the protagonist's pet lunges at the crab. And with just one bite, it strips off a significant portion of the shell. Upon seeing this, the protagonist realizes that the blow is fatal. The crab had no chance of survival, for part of its eye had also been torn off. We see the crab losing control of itself. He starts running in different directions and destroying everything around him. Moreover, he tramples some of the protagonist's lotus plants. That was bad. And while Gigi, focused on the crushed lotuses, didn't notice the crab that appeared right in front of him. In one motion, the claw strikes the protagonist. That blow caused his mouth to bleed. But in doing so, the crab was crumpled. Its attack pushed the protagonist back. But our hero won't leave here and let the crab escape. That crab will either die or become his pet. Now we see him facing the monster. Looking into its eyes, the hero notices the crab has a weakness. Every animal has a weakness. But at that moment, thinking of her, the crab decides to attack the protagonist. However, the hero manages to dodge at the last moment. Falling through the air, he controls both pets. His goal is to bind the crab's claws. And so his two pets rush to the crab. The crocodile, with its strength, grabs one claw. And the other fish does the same thing with the other claw. Now that both claws are restrained, he can finally execute the plan. He had already noticed that no matter how wounded a crab was, it never covered the wounded spot. Protected his abdomen instead. So now his weak spot is his abdomen. Realizing this, he picks up the spear. He has been preparing for this strike for a long time. He squeezes a thin stream of water on the tip to pierce the thick armor. And he's ready to use all his mental strength. But then the system appears and asks him to stop. His mental energy is too low. Control of the monsters will be lost. But our hero says no. After all, he said before the fight that courage would be decided between them, the crab or him. He then grips the hilt tightly and releases the spear. When he releases it, the spear goes into the belly of the crab. Since its claws are held by the pets, the crab can't do anything. The spear flies straight into his belly and, charged with his mental power, is instantly hit. Only then does the spear pierce the crab. It's as if the crab is releasing itself from the pet's grip, pointless to resist. Only after all of this does the protagonist realize that he may have managed to defeat such a creature, and he becomes a little happier because of it. He closes his eyes, only to quietly feel the bubbles in the lake rise. And after a little while, the hero decides to open his eyes. Opening them, he realizes he's passed out again, so he turns to the side and sees his two pets. He now realizes that they both saved his life, and for that he is truly grateful. Even so, however, his head still ached, and he realized that he must not abuse mental control, or else this sort of thing would happen again. But suddenly he pulls his hand forward, and a few moments later touches something. Opening his eyes, he was surprised. His hand was on top of the very crab he had just defeated. It is only then that the protagonist realizes that his pets not only pulled him out of the lake, but also carried a giant crab. This surprises the guy a lot. If he decides to boil this crab, it will bring him a huge level jump and a giant water essence. However, we see the crocodile approach the crab and discover that the crab is a female. As he gets closer, he thinks he'll become incredibly strong by eating it. But then he notices that there are crab eggs nearby. First he wanted to tame her, but now he's changing his plan. He's going to tame the newly hatched crabs. To tame them, he thinks of different ways. At first, he even thought of using a blood dominance talisman that could subdue the eggs as well. So, he cuts part of his arm, and then puts the blood on top of the egg. Only after that does the sign appear, the contract of domination. Now that he has completed the ritual, he is glad he was able to do so, but at the same moment he begins to feel a slight shiver. Then notices that the egg has begun to crack. And out of it comes a crab claw, a blue claw. After a little while, the blue crab breaks out the shell completely. Now the protagonist has a new pet. Who could be king of the crabs? Scene changes. A young man decides to break off a piece from the crab's body before tasting it. It is only after tasting this piece that he gets his first fusion points. Force readings are skyrocketing and power is coming out of every crevice, giving the man an incredible power that frightens even him in that moment. With each passing moment, the power fills him more and more. Even his pets can sense this change from a distance. And it's only when the transformation is complete that he truly realizes the enormity of his inner potential. In addition, it becomes clear all of his wounds have completely healed. It's almost like a blessing from above for him. Along with improving his fitness and devouring that mythical fish, he realizes some extra fusion points have come to him. Finally, he feels the power of his blood energy. According to what Instructor Rutz heard a short time ago, he may be nearing the edge of a skin stage breakthrough. But now, satiated with the best of what he could eat, he throws the leftovers to his pets to finish. Besides, leaving leftovers for the crab would be akin to cannibalism, as it would be eating the flesh of its own race. Considering the size of the crab, it was so small that it couldn't even finish the rest. That's why the man named it Little Claus. After that, he realizes clearly, if he manages to break through the skin barrier within the next month, he would be able to officially join the ranks of the martial arts hall disciples, and then the Zhao family would no longer be able to threaten him. In the meantime, he would have to return to the hall to properly prepare for his next training session. The plot goes back a little bit, to the moment when Hagapide falters. His actions go against the rules of the battle regulations. Because it's on the grounds of Lu Hall. He rises, trying to show that he wasn't breaking any laws. He was just following orders and acting according to the charter of a certain third young master. But as soon as this was uttered, the expression on Lu Xiao's face abruptly changes. He is dumbfounded. The rogue turns around as if pondering, what are the rules by which this dog of a family should act? Follow the martial arts statutes or obey the laws of the Zhao family? And so, having said this, he begins to laugh with his company. He noticed that once he left the Zhao family for a few days, he immediately forgot who the real owner was, and that was something that should not be forgotten. He's implying that if it wasn't for the Zhao family's choice, if they hadn't appointed him and his father as heads of the family, there's no telling where they'd be now. And he adds, if you want to be an obedient dog, learn to obey. Don't you even have the guts to defend yourself against him? But that one doesn't have a chance for a response, especially when his father still remains in Zhao's territory. Silence only fuels their anger more. In the end, the young man apologizes, because in his eyes, protecting his family is most important, and nothing else matters now. The crowd then begins to openly laugh at him, turning him into a laughingstock like a dog. He continues to taunt Lu, making no secret of his gloating. And then, laughing again, suddenly stops abruptly. A spit flies into his face. This spit is from one of the main character's friends who was laughing at the whole scene before that too. Lying on the ground, The man continues to mock his face, emphasizing that their pathetic stunts are worthless. Zhao wipes the spit off his face, and only then, with a chuckle, allows himself a short laugh in response. A few moments later, he places his foot on his friend's arm, causing him to yelp in pain. He wanted to play the hero, but he got the full brunt of it. Now instead of a direct hit, he decides to torture his friend. But the one, still lying down, asks him to stop. Rising up, he declares that he can now do whatever he wants with them. No one's coming to rescue them because the instructor's gone and there's no one else to count on. But it was at that very moment that the spectators who were standing behind and watching the scene flew off to the sides. He turns sharply, and in the darkness spots a mysterious figure with eyes blazing with rage. It was the protagonist himself. He springs up on the spot, lowering his gaze. His friends lie before him. One of them is completely exhausted. What he sees makes the man extremely furious. This anger is so strong that even those around them can feel themselves beginning to lose their composure. Now, with grim determination, he pronounces, "What happened here is unforgivable." So, the narrative continued immediately after all the events that took place. As the whole scene unfolded in the courtyard, it appeared that someone was watching intently from outside. The young man felt the need to apologize for his mentor's behavior. Besides, he showed up noticeably late. It was only now that he began to realize that Xiaohu was not the cold person he had seemed before. The man probably possessed a certain detachment from nature, but at that moment, his heart was good. However, some inner barrier was holding him back, preventing him from breaking the bloody barrier. A warrior who has lost his courage is no different from a lifeless body. This observer was Yang Dong-song. Moving closer to the mentor, he began to beg for him to intervene and provide help, for little Lien would not be able to overpower the villain. He hesitated for a while, pondering, but soon decided within himself that it was not worth interfering. A powerful wave of energy emanated from his body. The tension could be felt everywhere. While all this was going on, the main stage was once again in the spotlight. The man laughed, asking, "Well, when is he going to get his teeth knocked out?" The chief, however, snapped his fingers as if to indicate that he was ready for action and now intended to knock out the teeth of his opponents. He stepped forward, and his speed increased. The coward pointed to the bodyguards to be the first to go into battle. In front of them was just a fisherman. They went at him, but suddenly the very same hero appeared and immediately gave one of them a strong blow to the face, throwing him back. The second opponent responded with a blow that almost reached the target, but the hero managed to dodge in time. Immediately, he punched him in the face, sending him backward, but a third rushed to join the fight to avenge his comrade. The one tried to strike the protagonist in the face, expecting to knock him out with that one move. However, the guy was quicker and delivered a sharp blow to the attacker's face. The force of the blow was such that he lost some of his teeth. Having dealt with them, the hero turned his attention to the next enemy. The man with the aura and peak of the skin stage wondered if this opponent was really that strong. Even though he had defeated his comrades, it still meant nothing. But as he continued to reason, the hero's gaze remained cold-blooded and silent, which was starting to get confusing. Nevertheless, the man did not back down. He lunged forward and threw a punch. The hero managed to defend himself by responding with a punch to the stomach, pushing his opponent back, but not incapacitating him. A punch to the face followed. He turned out to be strong, but still not enough to end the fight. And now the decisive blow came in the chin. Instantly unconscious, the opponent collapsed to the ground. While the body lay motionless, the protagonist once again stepped into the center and called the opponent a weakling. Suddenly, Zhao rushed forward and pulled out the knife hidden behind his back. He was determined. He wasn't going to lose to some fisherman. He stabbed him in the stomach, but it wasn't enough. A series of blows followed. Each one of them should have put his opponent down, but even after several attacks, he continued to stand. Muttering annoying phrases, he grabbed the knife and only now realized, this guy is an embarrassment to the entire fighting hall. That level of fear only made the hero cringe. He clenched his fist and put all his rage into a powerful punch right in his face. The opponent's face pressed into the ground, and the scene suddenly froze. With an intimidating expression on his face, Lien remained on his feet, and a shattered Zhao began to call out to Lu Xiao, hoping for help from the instructor. He demanded that the one who dared to raise his hand against his students be punished, but the observer was hesitant to make up his mind. Before he could do anything, A huge sword collapsed into the thick of the battle, attracting all eyes. After a few moments, someone's hand appeared, as if representing the figure to which it belonged. It was the same master, previously known, and he began listing the names of those present, excluding GH. He reported that all of them are no longer affiliated with the fight room. Now Lu Xiao had to go to the secret room to discuss something in private. Meanwhile, in the background, our hero slowly rose up, and I realized it was the legendary modder Yang Dong's son, and called out to him. Inwardly, he realized that he probably couldn't stay in the battle hall anymore, especially after everything that had happened. He began to rethink the fight that had occurred. The fight had come to an end as if by itself, but it was clear that to defeat such opponents with ease, he lacked the strength to do so yet. And at that moment, the master called Liang over. The guy who expected to be expelled now was suddenly faced with an unexpected offer. He was offered to become the master's personal apprentice, and this caused him a real shock. Unable to believe what was happening, he just froze. One of the most powerful fighters was holding out his hand. On his knees, he watched the great master of the martial hall turn just to him, a mere lad, to make him a great disciple. But now the scene has been postponed to the next few days. Now, in the Yang residence, we see some servants discussing that master has just personally received the 9th disciple. The girls immediately notice that he is kind of cute and head over to where Liang is. Upon entering his room, we see them bringing our hero suitable clothes and offer to dress him. He declines the offer for now, and at the same moment both girls who were in his room leave. After they leave, our hero sighs a little. Now he sits there thinking, not believing that this is all really happening. But after all, it has already been 2 weeks since he defeated Lu Qing. But thanks to some of the medications that this family has, they have been able to recover quite well. He and his friends are perfectly fine now, but now he is no longer alone. Now that he had all this family support, now was the perfect time to take revenge on the Zhao family. But the scene shifts to a different location. They start discussing a few things, like the fact that Liang was literally on the verge of death last night. And besides, they couldn't believe that someone like him could defeat someone who almost broke through the skin barrier. But as soon as he brings it up, his companions ask him to stop repeating the same thing, because Hu Qi has been spinning the same story for 2 weeks. In essence, for a master to choose someone, that someone either has to be very powerful, or perhaps they are a dragon hidden among humans. While they were discussing this, Zhu Shaoqing appears and asks the jealous comrade to go to his younger brother. But the guy, having just heard this, replies that before coming here, he had already given him a really cool gift. And then the door swings open behind us. It is at this point that our hero comes out. He's heading straight for them. And here he is in his new clothes. This outfit changes our hero's status a bit. Only now, seeing his brothers, he thanks them for the gift. But then the older brother sort of asks them not to worry. He holds out his hand and says he has prepared something very special for him. It was a beautiful piece of tungsten steel, and with that piece of steel he could go to the gun shop at any time. He could have gone to the armory at any time, and there he could make the weapon he needed. Seeing this, our hero simply thanks his big brother. But while he's talking, his other brother appears and asks him not to waste any more time, especially because they need to go to the main hall, as their master has been waiting for a long time. As they move forward, the scene shifts to Zhao's mansion. There's someone here calling for their master. He considers a beautiful work of art. But he gets word that Zhong's body has been found. But what was inside his body had somehow disappeared. But the moment he hears it's gone, he gets angry and slaps the guy. It's only then that he says that if suddenly this thing comes out, there's going to be a huge problem. He realizes the situation he's in and says, "I'm sorry." And he ends up blaming Liang, our hero. But there's nothing he can do now, because Liang is Dong Xiong's personal disciple. If he really wants to keep hunting Liang, he's going to be in big trouble because even he and his family can't pull against that guy. But right now, he needs to use whatever methods he can, no matter what. The main thing is to find this disappearing thing as quickly as possible. He realizes his position and just goes along with it. He Zhao has other plans for our hero. But the scene shifts to another place. Young man or someone is calling for Liang. Yang Dong 4 calls our hero, and in calling him, he shows kindness, for which he finds himself a little grateful himself. Plus, he's brave and hard as a rock, much more than he thinks he is, a great guy to be one of his students. He asks him if he really wants to be his disciple. He, already on his knees, simply accepts the offer. But there is one thing. He must be humble, and it does not matter if someone is below him in status. He must not humiliate such a person. Moreover, he must not harm other students or behave inappropriately. Liang, our hero, kind of understands everything and accepts the terms, and that's fine. All he had to do was drink some tea, and becomes his 9th apprentice. And having become his apprentice, no one will be able to intimidate or insult our hero, because he, his master, will now be his support. Once again, disciple Liang understands his master, and folding his hands, he thanked him from the bottom of his heart. Moving on to the next day on the practice field, where we see a lot of people busy practicing. After a long training session, their leader asks 2 of them to stop and go rest under a tree. As they sit under a tree and rest, they begin to discuss a certain Lan who has just received personal instruction from the master. Later, they start celebrating, especially because that guy, Liu Yan, lost his gang and was expelled from the martial university. Meanwhile, backstage, the real instigator of everything that happened to our hero was starting to get annoyed. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to another location where he asks Liang if he knows the meaning of the 4th barrier and the 7 paths. Liang replies that he knows the initial barriers: skin, flesh, bone, and blood. However, he is not fully aware of the others. And then he begins to explain that the 7 paths are the wild horse, the wolf smoke, the tiger hunt, the heavenly dragon, and others. In the wild horse realm, a warrior at the peak of his skill can hold back dozens of racers without even moving. In the wolf smoke area, bloody energy rises like smoke from a pack of wolves, reaching several meters high. In the tiger hunting area, the blood energy rages like a tide. Its power is so terrifying that ordinary people tremble. In the realm of the great elephant, every movement shakes the earth, can bring down mountains and stop rivers. Finally, in the heavenly dragon realm, one who becomes a divine dragon is able to break free from the shackles of the world. Minter remarks that he doesn't know anything about the others. If the martial arts path in this world is so powerful, perhaps it is the key to returning to his former world. However, he is unsure of his exact cultivation level. Nevertheless, he is told not to worry. After all, he doesn't know how many martial schools exist in Payan. Liang mentions that there should be 3 such schools. The other 2 remain in Payan because their level allows them to stay in the city. However, for some reason, Master Yang decided to stay in Payan since it was his hometown. Master Yang is the only one in Payan who has reached the tiger hunting level. Hearing this, Liang begins to think that with his system, he would be able to reach this level as quickly as possible. The next lessons would start the next day, so he was advised not to dwell on cultivation and go step by step. Now he needs to catch spirit fishes as soon as possible to break through the barrier and become a true martial artist. The scene shifts to the middle of the lake. After catching a few fish, he notices that his raft can no longer handle it. He needs a bigger boat. On the other hand, he wonders why he has yet to catch any spiritual fish. Ignoring these doubts, he opens his system screen and sees that the merge progress has reached 37%. While he is admiring the system screen, a mysterious feather suddenly falls in front of him. Shortly thereafter, the previously calm lake begins to shake slightly. And then suddenly there's a huge wave. Our hero gets scared and tries to figure out what it was, but he never gets the answer he longed for. For right in front of him, this creature appears. What appeared was basically the shadow of 2 monstrous and gigantic creatures fighting in the middle of the lake. But now that all the smoke has cleared, he realizes that a primitive toad and a giant bird are fighting there. And the battle was indeed fierce, as this giant bird easily drops the toad back into the water. But with that simple movement, dropping the toad, she creates a giant wave that reflected back. And that's where our hero was. And the wave was headed straight for his boat. Since it was a small boat and it was not secured, all of his fish unfortunately ended up overboard. In addition to losing all the fish, he also loses the boat. At this point, finding himself completely in open water, he stands up and grabs onto the wreckage of the boat to steady himself. But instead of remaining calm, he notices that the bird is making a roaring noise. But this roar was directed toward our hero, and at that moment it strikes him. He gets scared because the bird is using some form of mental attack. And after this mental attack that the main character has just experienced, he is hit by a shockwave that drowns him in the lake. Unable to breathe for several minutes, he loses consciousness. But after a while, he does come to his senses. And at that moment, he sees our little crab in front of him, which pulled him from the bottom of the lake to the surface. After realizing that the crab and the others saved his life, he feels joy and even wonders if the crab did it on purpose for him. But when he regains consciousness, he realizes that it was that frightening bird that brought him to such a state. But that wasn't all. The monsters fought in a truly terrifying way. But trying to capture something like that is too difficult. So he gives up the idea of capturing such powerful monsters. Moreover, he realizes that it was all for nothing, because he lost all the fish and eventually the whole boat. He gets a little upset, but not too much, because he has his comrades around him. But at that moment, the crocodile opens its eyes and turns its attention to Messers. And then he notices he has a hornfish in his mouth. There's more to come with this fish. But blood energy itself is only a reflection of the physical power accumulated by a martial artist. However, blood energy itself does not become a source of power. On the contrary, it is its echo, a consequence born afterwards. But this consequence, in turn, can elevate the cause, closing the chain that creates an endless, upward spiral of growth. After realizing the essence of what's going on, the guy comprehends this cycle, and only then finds a way to awaken it in himself. And so, when the conditions came together and everything inside lined up perfectly, the warrior is ready to put the principle into action. He closes his eyelids, and the image of his older brother pops up in the back of his mind, who imparted to him a rare skill of concentration that facilitated the passage through barriers of inner strength, a skill that helped martial artists break through to the next stage. The essence of overcoming the gate of Pi and the path to becoming a true master is to root the blood energy deep within the chest. Every time he satiates himself with blood energy, the guy is fortified with selected fish delicacies. Closing his eyes again, the young man realizes he has already made 38 attempts, but none have been decisive yet. However, a new flash of memory brings another piece of advice from his brother. To overcome the gate of Pi, one must connect chi and blood, allowing them to awaken faith throughout the body and cause the skin to purify. Blood chi is the power that accumulates in the chest when the body is filled with martial aspiration. The young warrior senses it's still not enough. In the human body, this energy gathers like a vital nucleus that nourishes every cell. Guy catches the moment a warm stream begins to flow through his chest, merging with the blood energy and spreading through his limbs and bones, reaching his skin and face. He compares the sensation to the cleansing of an ancient body, as if the shell is being shed, revealing a new one. The heart in my chest beats fast, and my body starts to move without will. It takes a while before the man opens his eyes and a slight vapor rises from his mouth. Even that attempt fails. After long hours and hard training, he reaches his 49th attempt, but clearly realizes that even that is still not enough to overcome the hurdle. However, at this level, synchronization means that something meaningful will happen when it reaches 50%. He could go on, but suddenly he notices the fish is out and the lotus roots are almost out of effect on him. At that moment, he notices something unusual. It is already light outside the house. And then the young man remembers that he received a special message from his uncle a few days before practice began. At this moment, Lian Dan Kong and Chen Xingchen come onto the stage. Now being close to them, he recognizes both of them. And it surprises him that these two men came to him, for they were the fathers of two of his friends. Upon arriving, the men wanted to find out what had happened to their sons, who had not returned home for 2 days, causing alarm. The boy awkwardly scratched the back of his head, turning back and forth to Uncle Ling and Uncle Chan. He explained that the three of them had piqued the interest of some mentors, causing them to be sent to a special cell for enhanced training. In fact, they were badly wounded, and returning home now would only frighten their relatives with the sight of their mangled bodies. Hearing this, the men laughed. Knowing the character of their sons, they guessed that they had probably just fought among themselves, and that was the explanation. Before leaving, one of them mentioned that a village was now holding a sacrifice to the river. This comes as a surprise to the young man. After all, he was sure that such rituals only took place once every 3 months. But it is explained to him that the god of the river has given signs and now is the right time. Guy remembers once seeing a giant frog almost defeating a huge bird in battle. Maybe this is an omen. He decides that he absolutely must take part in the ritual. At the same time, the scene shifts to a different location. A cave full of light water vapor and lily pads. Suddenly there's a big gurgle. Inside stands a young man with a wooden stick in his hand. He doesn't take the plunge, but continues practicing with his pets, doing a cool water somersault in the air. and dives underwater again. A huge crocodile opens its mouth and rushes toward him. But the guy slips away. In that instant, he realizes that he is able to control about 150 liters of water and give a 15-kilogram punch. Raising the stick, he makes a sudden movement. The punch goes straight for the pets. Upon approaching, the fish will instantly neutralize the attack by simply dispersing it. When the wave subsides, both beasts cease their attack. The fight has tired them out. As he stares at the system screen, he notices something strange and turns his gaze back to the wooden stick. He realizes that the water blade technique is incredibly powerful, but with the real weapon that third brother mentioned, its effectiveness would be much higher. Spiritual artifacts once existed in this world. They could regenerate themselves and even grow in strength, but they required heavenly, almost inaccessible materials to create them. The young man wonders if he'll ever be able to acquire such a weapon. But a sudden burning distracts him. It immediately grabs his full attention. Even the fish start moving in the same direction, as if sensing an opening. Approaching the wreckage, he finds a strange object there. Turns out it's a feather. Probably fell out of the wing of the same giant bird. Our hero stands gazing at this feather, and it seems to him that it looks very much like the feather from the first Litten. It seems to him to be very valuable. Perhaps he even thinks it might be a treasure. Squinting at it, he wonders what would happen if he took it to his older brother. The scene changes to Pinyon County, and so walking on it, and looking for some different stores nearby. He notices smoke in the distance that catches his attention. He realizes that the smoke is coming from an area nearby, and decides to go there to ask his older brother if he can do it. He appears in Lu Ming's blacksmith shop. Inside, you can hear the scraping of metal against metal. After a little while, noticing our hero, the older brother rejoices. But our hero says he found something interesting while fishing this morning, and that's why he came here. Once the guy picks up the bag and opens it, he discovers a feather of purple fire plumage inside. It was, perhaps, a real treasure. Upon hearing this, the hero is surprised and asks if his brother knows what it is. He replies to Liang that he knows. It was an incredible discovery, for it was the feather of the purple fire phoenix, a rare and spiritual creature. Every time it faces danger, the bird puts all its life force into the fight. Into a single feather, which then flies in all directions, allowing her to escape. Among all these feathers, one contains the bulk of her essence. This feather is called the golden fire feather. With its help, the bird is reborn, similar to the way a caterpillar casts off its cocoon. But in this case, she's dumping her whole body. They realize that this feather has incredible power like golden feathers. Upon closer inspection, however, the older brother says that, alas, the feather the hero found is only a remnant of the purple fire feather. But it was still a wonderful discovery. Realizing this, the hero asks what to do with it. Elder brother replies that it can either be absorbed as internal energy or it can be forged into a spiritual weapon. After thinking for a bit, the older brother asks the hero what kind of weapon he would like to get. The hero decides based on his last fight with the rock crab. He realizes that the spear is better suited for underwater combat and will complement his own techniques. In the end, he chooses the spear. Brother is surprised at the choice. It was rare in this martial arts school. Long weapons are difficult to exercise. But once the decision is made, he asks his older brother to incorporate the feather into his spear. Finally, our hero has a spiritual weapon. Once the spear was ready, the elder brother would send one of his acolytes to fetch it, to invite him to the smithy to procure it. Our hero thanks his brother again. But before he leaves, he turns around and asks what the tall column of smoke is seen outside. The older brother explains that it was the Fahua temple that somehow caught fire this morning. In the midst of the flames, they discovered something that shouldn't have existed. Something that should have been gone a long time ago. It was a mountain demon. This monstrous creature crawled, and in doing so, several people nearby were completely annihilated, while the demon continued to roam with impunity. The scene switches to another location. Let's say a rather ominous mansion. There's something going on in the nearby woods. Earlier, we found someone's footprints. This girl was running, struggling, completely exhausted. We saw her, completely terrified. But she couldn't die, because her child is doomed to die too. She screamed for help, and in the temple, one of the monks appeared. It was the boy who heard her scream, quickly turned around and realized his mentor's help was needed. At this point we noticed that she was no longer able to remain conscious. As she hit the ground, before she collapsed altogether, She glanced forward. And there we found a monk suddenly rushing towards her, calling out her name. But while he was calling her name, she finally passed out. A few minutes later, the scene changed. We found ourselves in a room. She was coming around, and as soon as she did, we heard someone calling her name. Then one of the older elders appeared, pleased that she was conscious again. Now coming to her senses, she tried to get up, and when she did, she tried to realize where she was. She soon realized that she found herself in the temple of Pharaoh without understanding anything. She was asked what had happened. She turned out to be a Hanzu. 3 months ago, she traveled to Penang, and I ran into some masked thugs. She was captured, and only then was blindfolded. After all this, she was taken to a very mysterious place. There the blindfold was removed, and she was met with a terrible surprise. The place was a veritable hell. The people there were tortured until they turned into demons. Afterward, the elder asked her why she had been kidnapped. She held her head and said they didn't say much. They only mentioned that they were pearl material. The moment she spoke of the pills, memories came flooding back to her. A symbol appeared on that man's stomach, and the others folded their hands to perform some macabre ritual. The other, holding a suspicious knife in his hand, lifted it over his head and then brought it down. As he plunged the knife into the man, he cried out in pain. And after that agony came what they had longed for. It was a pill. That newly emerged pill floated to the hand of that mysterious man. He lifted it up, showing it to his student. And Liang, but not our GG, and the others didn't understand what it meant. Then he asked them to explain what the symbol on their bellies meant. He continued by saying that it was a pearl germ created by the great Supreme Lord. These people were given broth made from the flesh of the mountain spirit. Whether male or female, their belly swelled and condensed into a meaty core. After 3 months, this flesh would turn into a pill embryo, and a few such nuclei could be melted down into a pearl-gan embryo. He was asked if 3 months had passed, and he confirmed that if it wasn't extracted in time, it could explode. This surprised him greatly, for what was developing inside was probably something no one would want to face. While he was telling all this, the scene returned to Minya's palace. There the boy went into the room where she lived and brought her tea. He obediently went to her and called out to her. When he walked in, without hesitation, he suddenly noticed the eerie silence. But something caught his attention. There was blood at his feet, and the sight of her horrified him. However, a dark something popped out from behind the door. It frightened the boy so much that the girl suddenly opened up in front of him, and he saw that it was only the lower part of the girl. Eventually, he realized that this something was not a good thing at all. He turned his attention to the girl's bed. On the other hand, he noticed another part of the girl. When he saw this, he dropped what he was holding in his hand and collapsed backwards out of fright. But suddenly a drop of something mysterious falls on his head, startling him and drawing his attention. He stands up and lifts his head, and when he looks up, he's in for a huge surprise. It was what lived inside this girl, but turned into this monster. The narrative shifts to one of the monks who has gone to town to get reinforcements to make sense of everything that's going on. They follow the trail, and among these guards is the young hero Lu. He thanks them for their arrival, for with their help he will be able to speed up the investigation of the case. Lo says no thanks because they are warriors, and warriors from a martial arts school should know about such things. Plus, after looking back a bit, he was ordered to see what was going on at the Pharaoh temple. He was puzzled by this and asked what it was. He was told that he didn't need to know. He then showed them the temple of Pharaoh, where the monks rested after the service. But as soon as they looked inside, there was a tense atmosphere in the air. It was like the afterlife. They decide to open the door. But when they open it, they discover something frightening. Another monk asks what's going on. Why is everyone dead? But at that moment, one of the monks, terrified, rushes out and screams to save his mentor, begging him not to let him die. However, after looking around, another person present remarks that it's not a good idea to act rashly. You have to do your due diligence first. But on closer inspection, he notices that none of the bodies here are intact. Then he makes a discovery, where he's been sent and how he's going to cover it. There was another place where something was clearly going on. Trails of blood seemed to be drawn in. It seems as if the bodies have been dragged, and everyone wonders how this could have happened. They decide to follow this trail inside the building. Shalu and the monk had been on this path for some time. They continue their conversation and enter the room where the monk used to live. But there they find another monk, pale almost to the point of transparency, without any expression on his face. They ask themselves what was that and what's going on here. But as he looks around, he realizes there's a real disaster here. Another monk just stands there, praying because there's nothing else she can do. Suddenly, the door behind them slams shut on its own, locking them inside. Once locked in, they rack their brains as to who could have closed the door. But one of them calls for calm. Lu, however, can't afford to relax. For now, he needs to focus on the threat in front of him. He turns around and tries to figure out what it could be. It could be the eggs of a mountain demon, but clarifies that the ghost tribe may be involved. These monsters are essentially mountain demons that hatch after consuming enough human blood and flesh. As they watch this creature, they realize that if it hatches, it will be extremely difficult to handle. At this point, the egg begins to shake, and only then, with his mouth open in amazement, does he notice, as a hand emerges from it. This hand then touches the ground with the palm of its hand. And the second stage of the mountain demon's hatching begins, as the monster crawls. In front of him is a monk kneeling and praying, but the monster suddenly lunges at him. Without making the slightest movement, the monk falls into the claws of the creature, and when it grabs him, it digs into his neck. He cries out to his mentor, but at that moment, gripped by fear, he grabs his sword and tries to cut off the demon's neck. However, the monster, already satiated, shifts his attention. He turns to the hunter who has joined the fight, and with one palm alone, he squeezes his head with force. With his other hand, he throws off another warrior standing nearby, throwing him backwards. He falls and blood spurts from his mouth. As the monster holds his victim's head back, the victim calls for help again. Now, upon closer inspection, the hero realizes that this creature is at the stage of an indomitable stallion. And what's worse, it hasn't even broken through all its barriers. If he turned around and used his remaining strength, he would easily crush that door. But if the monster breaks out, things will end very badly for them. Nevertheless, the most important thing for the hero is to survive. He's always lived like that. But he always regretted it in the end. He always closed his eyes and let things take their course, regardless of the situation. Even though he did it all for his family and his father, he feels like a poisonous monster. At this moment, grabbed by the neck, he opens his mouth and, sinking his teeth into the monster's arm, calls for help again. And as soon as that happens, Lu grabs the sword and exposes the blade. Just then he goes to attack the demon that was just devouring his comrade. He suddenly stops and turns back to him. He helps his companion, who finds himself in mortal danger. Looks like today he'll have to test the strength of an indomitable stallion that knows no mercy. But before all of that happens, the narrative goes back a bit for a moment. In this fragment of the past, Lu raises his sword. And with shining eyes he assures that one day he will be Yang Dong's hero, and the short man next to him says that the guy is really outstanding. Besides, he had his father on his side. If he could get into the master's palace, it was likely that any horizons would open up before him. It seemed like a last chance, a gift of fate. The girl tells him with naive determination that he will succeed. He was living that dream, and it seemed it might soon come true. But the scene shifts seamlessly to a different place. Under the children's screams, he was lying on the ground. Those whom the young man had once defeated now scoffed, caustically wondering how he dared to go to such a thing in a martial arts school. In their eyes, he was a motherless brat destined to rot in a corner next to his dying father. And yet he carried those words in his heart through his life, but suddenly the narrative jumps to another corner of the old house. A fit of coughing shakes his body, while his father is dressing his son's wounds. The man, carefully tending to the injuries, wonders if he's gotten into another scuffle. The son says others were the instigators, but his father asks when he leaves the house not to be impertinent and to show respect for his elders. He understands the meaning of the words and silently agrees, for honor remains important even in defeat. On the other hand, his reflections lead to the question, what would a master do in such a situation? A clan disciple should be open-minded, humble, and eager to learn. He should not rely on past merit or look down on others. Once again, Lu stands with his sword in front of the behemoth, not moving from his spot until it takes a step. He rushes to attack, remembering only one thing. The master's instructions forbade the use of power against the weak. It was to be used for defense. Young strikes again, misses and remembers again. True power does not serve oppression. With another blow, he shreds the candle holder next to them. As these thoughts flicker through my mind, the monster moves to attack, but the memory keeps taking me deeper. Somewhere out there, a candle flame flares up, and the scene shifts dramatically. Memories take him back to his childhood, where he heard from Master Yang to get into a martial arts school. You have to be more than just strong. You have to overcome obstacles, carry a blade, and take responsibility. Remembering this, he barely dodges the monster's blow, allowing it to graze his face, and immediately applies his clan's technique of water slashes, though none of them reach the target. Nevertheless, the guy doesn't stop. He attacks again and again, as the battle continues and the monster dodges. The image of a mentor who fought mighty creatures alone. And just as he is immersed in these images, the monster sinks its teeth into his arm. The monster's grip proves fatal. A limb is torn off. But ignoring the pain, the young man clutches the hilt of his sword and leaps forward, straight at the beast. The sound of the impact traveled through the room, and a memory with the wood resurfaced. The scene changes. Everything is engulfed in flames and the sword is already in the monster's back. He couldn't let the monster escape. There was no turning back, only sacrifice. But even after the whole battle, it became clear that the enemy was not finished. The creature breathed, and its incredible power became more and more apparent. Suddenly, one of the comrades below couldn't stand it and shouted, "Hero!" The guy catches himself thinking, is he a hero? And in the meantime, the images come back to mind. There are plenty of people in this world who deserve that title. But he was different. Once, when he was still an apprentice, he had seen the man who now threatened him order the beating of two defenseless boys. I had to obey, or I'd be in trouble myself. He approached the two defenseless children, but suddenly something stopped him, and he began to mumble and hesitate. He had already clenched his fist for his action, but inside himself he shouted to them, I'm sorry. I'm doing this for the sake of rising to the top and becoming powerful." Now the scene returns to the present, right after the battle. After all the events, the guards observe the situation. And one of the guards suddenly notices something important. It amazes everyone that the guy is here after everything that's happened. For he stood on the defeated beast, thrusting his sword into it, thus preventing it from escaping. Lowering his gaze, one of the researchers notices an ID card lying nearby. The man bends down to pick it up. And the moment he clutches it in his fingers, the memory takes him to another time. Once he had his hand out with food. The giver's face was stern, and everyone around him was trying to understand what had happened. But the guy just waved it away, as if to say it wasn't worth it. He was a hero, and heroes don't hurt the weak. Our scene goes back a bit. Someone shouts loudly. We meet the guy who set the arson to cover it up. Here he gets a reprimand from his former boss, who tells him that what he did was completely wrong. However, to save himself, the one replies that they did everything they could to protect their secret. They didn't expect that woman to run so fast. Moreover, she went straight towards the temple. And what's worse, by the time they got there, they found that the place was completely destroyed. In addition, there were two men there who were extremely difficult to defeat. On top of that, he had no choice but to throw Lu and the guards forward, and then lock the door behind them to buy time while they deal with those mountain demons. As soon as he entered the mansion, they set it on fire, figuring it would be easier to destroy all the evidence that way. However, his boss was furious with his actions and was going to kill him. But just at that moment, someone appeared and made him stop, saying that the real culprits in all this nonsense are both of them. They lost that woman, which was a huge disaster for them. They were not honest enough with their great mother. Deception is something they despise, and she clearly loves to punish such people. With a more serious expression on his face, he raised his hand and walked toward his subordinate lying on the ground. He lay on the ground, sweating and seized with terror, begging to be spared. But it was useless. He crushed it. At the same time, he proclaimed that it was the will of the Supreme Mother. Nevertheless, whether he likes it or not, he has made great turmoil among them. Therefore, the Supreme Mother will only bless Lord Zhao after his death. Meanwhile, he told him not to rejoice too soon, for they were all in the same boat. He realized this and set about cleaning up the aftermath. While he was putting everything in order, Butler Tsung asked if Servant Jun was really willing to give up his children. He replied that he didn't care and that something like that would never happen again. There was nothing more for him to do there anyway. Now he leaves everything in the hands of his master. The other man agreed, and they parted ways. As soon as he's gone, we see another servant commenting that Butler almost killed him. He says it was unacceptable. However, on the other hand, he himself admits as much. If it weren't for his family's wealth, he would never have had to listen to this old man. But because of him, he accomplished something very significant. He eliminated most of those mucks and let the monster that came out of that woman eat the men. Everything went exactly according to their plan. Now that everything is working out perfectly, he just needs to find a way to avoid any possible repercussions. When the situation in Feng Huang Temple was resolved, he would be able to escape to Feng Huang Temple. He has a base there where he can live a long life, perhaps even attain immortality. To make it even better, he'll be able to live his life in peace, without Jin interfering in his personal affairs. Besides, if they don't want to be controlled by the Dun, they'll have to minimize the damage beforehand. While he was saying this, our scene changed location to Yenxian Market. Our hero reflected. He never expected Lu Xiaohu's story to end like this. However, according to Libo, the man was one of the men who had fought for their lives that day. He seemed like a decent man. However, according to his older brother, the school never received official inquiries from authorities about that day. But he also wondered where the monster had come from and how good it was that it had already been exterminated. Until someone called out to him. He wondered if he was really back. And when he saw who was calling, he recognized Uncle Shun and wondered what was going on. Uncle Shun told him that he should go home as he had something he needed to see for himself. A crowd gathered at the gate of his house. Hearing this, he simply headed for the front door. Someone was sitting on the mountain. But suddenly a mysterious hand appeared and crushed the centipede. The monster, after crushing the centipede, simply grabbed it and swallowed it. The beast simply grabbed the centipede and swallowed it. While all this was going on, our scene switched to another location. Someone has remarked that according to great men, to become stronger, one must go through tremendous suffering and sorrow. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to another location. Someone is yelling about how the tree has completely rotted away. Hichin stood up proudly and said about this kid really suffering. The boy begged for it to stop, for he had already been getting punished for half an hour for some reason. The old one says the fisherman isn't worth that, but goes on anyway, and hits him in the buttocks with a stick. He yells about how a smart man like him had such a stupid son. And just before he hit him again, the boy said he would kill him like that. Hearing this, the father became increasingly irritated with his son and decided to beat him to death. While that boy was taking a bit of a beating, we are transported to another location. Aunt Lianshare notices that the boy has really gotten to this place, but she didn't realize he would change so much. This boy used to knock on her door all the time asking for food, and out of kindness she would give him something. Lian Gong meanwhile wondered what she had just said. In the very next second, he became angry. That boy is as ungrateful as his father. After hearing all this, she just asked him to calm down. But he changed the subject, telling her to shut up, for the big one had already arrived. Our protagonist has reappeared. As soon as he arrived, we saw the same guy still beating his son. When they finally met our hero, the old man stopped and headed towards the hero. Putting his palms together, he was very surprised that his nephew Liang had just returned. Now, with a rat face, he pronounced that Liang was indeed the most powerful in this life. After all, he had managed to become Master Yang's disciple. Hearing this, someone in the crowd asked, "Master Yang? The one from the martial arts school?" Someone said that becoming a personal disciple is like becoming an adopted son. Very honorable. This so stunned those present that they didn't know how to react. Another, with an even more ratty face, said he realized our hero's great potential from the beginning. However, all was interrupted. The chief rat boy walked up to Liang and, being at his side, gave him license to beat his son almost to death. He could do whatever he wanted, because no one could stop him. At that moment, he became interested. Permission to do anything allowed him to grab the rod and move closer. As he approached, he said he held no grudge, but you can't live your life harboring too much resentment. And to make matters worse, he wanted to live a long life. Upon learning that our hero was going to beat him, the man repented and admitted his guilt. In a fever, he declared that he would become our hero's slave. In response, our hero threw the rod under his feet, saying he would leave it for another time, or maybe never. At that moment, he had gone too far, perhaps too far. He had other things to do now. However, as he was about to leave, he was apprehended by several men, still tied up. He got angry and told his father that he still wanted to beat him up. However, his father stepped up and told his nephew Liang that he was not so generous, but he shouldn't be ungrateful either. Therefore, to avoid further ingratitude, he offered him 2,000 won in silver. Immediately when he mentioned it, everyone was shocked. He had found so many coins in his life, and yet someone else had found none. Suddenly, the very same uncle flew out of the building and started greeting the protagonist. He said that everyone should leave because our hero is one of his true nephews, so the gift should be given to him. Others said he should be ashamed. When GH was on the verge of starvation, he was the first to slam doors in his face. It was, and now that GH has made big money, he shows up in front of everyone trying to take the money for himself. At that moment, the mustachioed man turned to his nephew and asked, "Who is this guy?" Liang, in turn, replied that he didn't know. In the body owner's memory, this one was an ungrateful uncle who was never really family, just a parasite who took advantage of others. There was a festival of the river god in that village, so he offered that guy, one of us, to pay off all his debts. After all, he has a lot of money, and everyone in the village should try to give at least 1 silver coin. And now that he thought of it, he asked for a porridge stall, for there are a lot of hungry people around here. Then he turned and headed toward his house, and everyone began to praise our hero after him. When things quieted down, we saw Liang saying that the last time he practiced some sort of skin cleansing in martial arts school. But at that moment he felt that his skin had reached its limit. It was no longer stretching as it had before, but swelling. And if he wasn't mistaken, today was the day he was supposed to break through the skin portal. But one thing was clear. The final breakthrough would cause a lot more heat than before. Any mistake at that moment could have turned his brain into scrambled eggs. To avoid that, he had to apply physical cooling. Now he could finally advance in his cultivation. And when the man finally lowered himself into the vat, exhaled tiredly, he began to slowly sink into a meditative state, absorbed in cultivation. And after a while, what he had strived so hard to achieve happened. The skin barrier finally gave way under his onslaught. And after that, the man leisurely rose to his feet, feeling a pleasant excitement and strength inside. At that moment, he clenched his fists, and joy surged in his chest, finally managing to break through the boundary that had long restrained his growth. Now he had an opportunity before him to escape from the difficult situation in which he found himself. After calculating the possibilities, he realized he now controls 150 liters. However, despite what had been achieved, the merger with the system had barely progressed, and this was mildly frustrating. So after getting dressed, he gathered his thoughts. After all, with such strength, reaching almost 4 tons, he could achieve much more. Finally, all was well. His abilities complemented each other perfectly. And then he decided to go elsewhere to continue his journey. His hand instinctively reached for the door and swung it open. Just outside the door, he was suddenly confronted by another young man. The door hit him in the face with a sharp sound, and he fell to the floor with a thud. Once on the ground, the guy looked at the hero in surprise, as if doubting whether his dear nephew was standing in front of him. And then our hero immediately recognized the fallen man as his uncle Liangguan. He asked what he wanted. The guy came up and said he decided to bring some food, deciding that our hero could probably use at least a modest snack. But without waiting for an explanation, the man gestured to refuse the offering. And turning around, he closed the door in front of him. However, before he disappeared behind the door, the guy asked to wait for a while. This forced the hero to open the door slightly, not wanting to miss something important. Just then, the door smacked him in the face again, knocking him backward with a sharp slam. Falling to the floor with a broken nose, the lad declared that he was his own uncle and therefore had a right to be in the house. Furthermore, he wondered why he had refused the large sum of 1 silver that a fat man had offered. And so he started talking nonsense, calling our hero a madman. While the guy was shouting accusations, some people appeared behind him, silently watching. To the man, says the money should have been used to support himself, his cousin, and even this guy who was standing right there. And then the man did not hold back and turned to his uncle, asking with grim determination if he would like to die suddenly. It was enough for him to take 1 step forward, and the guy immediately recoiled. At that moment the hero seemed much taller and stronger than before. After all, he seemed worthless earlier, but now his gaze and aura made the guy fall to the ground in fear. And lying there, he pointed a trembling finger at the man, calling him an ungrateful bastard. Ever since he became a martial artist, it was as if his humanity had disappeared in him. But the woman began to accuse her uncle that when it was time to share the mourning, he didn't even help carry the coffin after Liang's father died. And when the hero was hungry, did not offer a grain of rice. And when the property was divided, his previous machinations looked negligible. This man had taken away some of the family's savings. He wondered what had happened and why those who had been with him were suddenly siding with the hero. It made him angry. But suddenly another person suddenly appeared. Thoth immediately made it clear that as soon as the hero went uphill, those jackals returned like beasts hungry for crumbs from the victor's table. The man recognized the old man as the village headman. And so, taking up his cane and with the help of 2 assistants, he drove the insolent man away. The very moment the guy was banished, our hero thanked the district headman for his support and help in getting rid of this burden. And the headman, in return, only asked him for a favor to be a presenter at the upcoming river festival. This could have been a good opportunity for him. He could watch what was going on. Maybe that day he would realize what this was all about. Realizing the possible benefits, he calmly accepted the offer. But first he had to learn the lyrics to the song. And so, the very next day, when the sky was just beginning to lighten, someone began to call out to him. The man went to the door, barely able to keep his feet, for he had spent the night cramming the necessary words for the ritual. Feeling capable of accomplishing the task, he felt a surge of new motivation. And besides, he had just completed his transformation, becoming a disciple of the ancient temples. And, finding a burst of inspiration, the young man headed straight for the elder's estate. Inside the ancient house, the old man found himself immersed in reading a book. While the young man realized that staying here had become burdensome, what depressed the guy the most was the thought of having to cram it all in just like they did in junior high school. But just as he had time to gather his thoughts a bit, the boy next to him jabbed a finger at him and started muttering, accusing him of being too loud, which instantly irritated the teacher and diverted his anger to the student. And just a few days ago, this same mentor was working his butt off to get the kid enrolled in elementary school. So now he should have behaved himself and appreciated the very fact of having a teacher willing to share knowledge. The boy realized he was conceding in this argument, but still, he had a lifetime of learning under his belt. And so now he began to use the remnants of his learning potential from that past life, channeling it into the defense of those who were weaker. Moreover, he hoped to expand his knowledge with the help of this teacher, even though he knew so much. So he was only counting on a slight change in teaching methods for the sake of a brighter future for the students. After all, the mentor's approach was too superficial and weak. However, such words provoked the teacher's anger, for his methodology had been passed down from generation to generation. And the young man questioned its effectiveness and suggested other ways of learning. And then the guy clarified that he didn't intend to belittle his mentor's efforts at all. Perhaps his method is not effective enough, whereas the pinging method really helps children's learning. The presentation of this method was much simpler than the way the old man used to work with his pupils. While he was explaining all this, another man appeared in the room. It was Saiken. Showing genuine curiosity, he immediately expressed a desire to learn more of what the guy knew. The children recognized this guy. He came from the capital and was a very important man. The teacher who was conducting the class suddenly looked at him with a note of respect and bowed. And after a short time he began his explanation. It all seemed really interesting to him. But even then, the mentor thought what was proposed was absurd. You couldn't just change what the descendants of the past had left behind. But again the boy intervened, interrupting the teacher and announcing his great discovery. He could well have gone to the court of the great Shoga dynasty, where, in fact, a reward for his knowledge awaited him. He began to realize that in time his peculiarity would inevitably attract the attention of others, and he needed to control his reputation. However, Shihung asked Liang if he would like to learn from him personally, though the old man was beginning to wonder if there was any point to it, especially since he considered Liang unworthy. Xing interrupted him and told him that education was not dependent on status. His teacher had taught him that. And so the guy suggested forgetting personal thoughts and paying attention to those above. He promised that there was no reason to worry, as he already had a way to handle the riskiest situations. For what the disciples dare not question, he will question himself. After that, he turned to the boy with an offer to become his apprentice. The young man bowed in agreement and accepted the offer. As he bowed and accepted this, the scene moved to the lake where his pets were playing. All three were having fun frolicking, every man for himself. But it was the cat something that was of particular interest, and asked for the ball to be thrown as hard as he could. The crab, excited by the idea, immediately set to work. He raised his tiny claw and sent the ball toward the catfish at top speed. Katsum, trying to catch the ball, failed to do so. The ball was too fast. As a result, the ball crashed right into him. The impact threw him back, but even so, he finally did catch the ball, and ran into some sort of obstacle. Something mysterious. And this object turned out to be a bell, which instantly gave a crack from which light poured out. Now that all the secret was out, it was possible to catch a young man in the middle of the silent lake at night. The crocodile, like a guide, led him to a hidden place that held something of interest worthy of the adventurer's attention. But at the same time, the animal was not averse to celebrating triumph in a water volleyball battle with the very ball woven from a vine. So he offered to show the tunnel that they had managed to dig in their time, and in which there was some mystery. To dispel doubts, the crocodile did the same maneuver as the catfish, as if reminding him of what had happened. The gesture made the man happy for how gorgeous his pet was. Now they were to go deeper inside, to the place where perhaps the essence of all that was happening lay. However, every time the young man was trapped in the vine trap, he found the texture of these weaves too strange. It aroused in him even more curiosity and a desire to get to the bottom of things. Deciding to check the composition of the vine, the guy grabbed one, and without hesitation bit off a piece, hoping to find a clue. But the taste was so unpleasant that he immediately spit it out, grimacing. Plus it was too strong. Realizing the futility of brute force, the man decides to climb higher, hoping to see more from there. When he reached the top, he was surprised to find that there was not a drop of water in the place. But as he stood there, he also noticed that all the vines were stretching toward that very point, converging into a single line. He began to wonder along with his pets, what does this mean? While he was pondering this, a strange millipede silently appeared behind his back, like a shadow that had come to life. She soared sharply upward, piercing the air just a centimeter from the man's body as if in warning. He barely had time to dodge when the monster slammed into the stone wall with a thud. After a couple moments, the creature rose again, clearly not intending to retreat. The hero was relieved to note that the thing moved slowly, which gave him a head start. But now he knew for sure all indications were that he had encountered an aquatic centipede, a creature rare and dangerous. The creature jumped up again, rushing towards him with furious force. But there was already a crab sitting on his shoulder nearby, ready to fight and not confused at the moment of threat. As soon as the claws noticed the approaching threat, they moved forward, blocking the swift attack. Everything froze, and the man noticed that the crab's claws had visibly enlarged, as if out of anger. After the crab dodged another blow, it became clear to him the situation could become deadly. The insect thought about escaping, but that's when everything changed. The crab instantly grabbed the centipede. Once she was in his grasp, the man noted with inner satisfaction how good his ally was. As he drew closer, he took another look and confirmed for himself it was definitely an aquatic centipede. There was no doubt about it. Using his accumulated knowledge, he realized the creature's power and its bites were a real threat. More importantly, this thing had a weapon that could scare even the most experienced masters. But the most terrifying thing was its venom, whose lethality evoked a primal fear. When he looked more closely, the young man realized that the weapon in front of him was a real weapon, deadly and alive. It must be inflicted. He picked up a stone from the ground as if preparing for an ancient ritual. His body became stronger. Then he cut his finger, and, drawing a drop of blood through the air, touched the mouth of his potential ally. In the same instant, a pulsing aura appeared above the creature, as if responding to a call. But the centipede was more powerful than the crocodile, which came as a surprise. A message appeared on the system screen. Danger innate, warning of a lurking threat. However, after persistent attempts, complete dedication and endurance, the man still managed to tame her. Now that the creature was obeying him, he realized her temper was fierce, and he gave her a name, Wei. To raise the level would require 10,000 units of water essence, which amazed the young man, because that was a lot of water essence. However, he remembered that he had previously consumed a spiritual water mushroom, and wondered, what if he could find more? After that, Wei moved in a different direction, driven by instincts or something else. The man followed her, and soon the centipede led him to a burrow from which vines protruded as if to point the way. For some reason a shadow caught his attention, the silhouette of a man hidden in the darkness. Curiosity took over and he approached, but found only a silent skeleton, left here forever. The skeleton clutched a strange object in his hand, as if something he didn't want to let go of even after death. Ancient inscriptions carved with effort were visible on the ground. It turns out that it was a Navy general. He was wounded and sunk, then out of shame he decided to die here. And our story continues. A little while later, as he got closer to everything that was going on. He moved even closer and continued reading a little longer. However, the inscriptions on the ground were almost disappearing, making him unable to comprehend many things. And if he is a warrior, our hero begins to think that nearby, most likely, someone left or threw away some kind of weapon. Or that tomb over there, maybe something valuable. Out of curiosity, he looks inside the box and finds some spirit mushrooms. But before he can leave, Messers will take the skeleton to a certain place to bury it with honors. And on top of that, thanks to this, he would finally be able to reach level 50. Meanwhile, he sits in front of his pets, who are terribly eager to taste these mushrooms. However, our hero refuses. After a bit of thought, he breaks off a slice and swallows it. After a few minutes of feeling light and soft, he got extra points. He's surprised, because even crab eggs didn't give him that much. And if he eats a whole mushroom, he'll earn even more points. That's what he does. He finishes the mushroom completely. Only later comes a message from the system. When he leveled up, he completed several missions. And with that, he gained a new ability. This new ability is a water jump, and he feels even weirder after that. A slight glow appears on his chest. And then he realizes the meaning of the sign, becoming much stronger and possessing new abilities. He heads over to the poor man lying on the ground, an emaciated skeleton, and respectfully thanks him for the gift of his strength. But now, thanks to his new abilities, he notices a puddle of water and starts to think it's worth using. Underwater, we see him using his new ability. His body turns into water and moves at a tremendous speed. He's not doing a very good job of controlling the movement, though. He ends up crashing into the wall. And it seems like a great movement ability in general, but it uses up a lot of stamina. As for the ability itself, it's just crazy. He gives the divine power of Waterful, who can evolve thousands of water power. But this time, his water power was a bit stronger. Whereas it used to be at 150 liters, it has now risen to 400 liters. The power of the force is staggering. In doing so, his creatures each grew by 200 to 500 points. The catfish is also very well pumped, and it seems that even his whiskers have gotten longer from it. Even the crab was feeling his best, holding a flower in his sign and enjoying his accomplishments. But among his pets, our favorite catfish evolved especially strongly, which surprised our hero very much. However, he doesn't think deeply about it. He laughed and said it was a good thing. However, the river festival is about to begin, so he'll spend that time learning from the masters. Plus, he has a feeling that something is going to happen at this festival, so he needs to get a little stronger. And now, a week later, we see the village in complete silence, until someone comes up to our hero's house and informs him that the Rio festival is happening today. Then he calls his centipede to come with him. She quickly crawls up his arm, and it ends up turning into a sort of bracelet. Turning into a bracelet, the hero goes to the door and opens it. After all, he has to go to the river's festival today. And so he arrives at a place where people have gathered. A whole bunch of people, but all eyes are on the main structure. Among them we notice a little girl walking with her mother and a goat. And suddenly she started crying and making crying noises for no reason. A puzzled mom approaches her daughter, trying to figure out what happened. The girl then points to the side and says there was a monster where she looked. Afterward, they look around but find nothing. Since she hasn't discovered anything, her mother asks her not to make up scary stories. Eventually they can leave the place and enjoy the festival. They leave, but the scene shifts a little bit forward. And there we see the same monster she saw. This monster spoke of immortality, but nevertheless summoned Liang, our hero. While the monster was eager to find our hero, the scene changes to a festival where everyone is merrily beating drums, and at the same time sacrifice animals to the river god. Then, walking between the rows, we notice a shaman carrying a haystack with smoke billowing from it. He offers our hero to go forward, but he needs to get up on stage and make a solemn speech for everyone. Having reached his goal, our hero begins to climb the steps. And only after GH's long climb to the podium. Downstairs we see that guy with the haystack again, announcing that the festival is about to begin. And our hero takes the scroll, after which he begins to read the words, begging the god of the river to calm down. As he reads out an invocation to the gods to the people below, his friends notice that our hero is already far elevated in his social status. They even wonder what happened. After all, they grew up together. They should have been on the same level. But while they ponder this, we see our hero absolutely focused on reading the scroll. While he is reading, upstairs, among the rooftops, we notice the same monster, who has also reached incredible heights. He begins to sneak around the rooftops and, after crawling a bit, finally locates our hero. However, the hero notices his appearance and realizes is the same mountain ghost his brother Mr. Lowe told him about. These monsters have leathery, stony armor like tree bark, just like in the illustrations and descriptions. While the demonstration lasted, we see that little girl from earlier scenes again. She froze in place, but suddenly feels the monster's presence again, screaming that she sees it again. And now she's calling for her mother. Her mom, however, doesn't understand what's going on and is only perplexed as to what this monster is. Then the monster, being on the roof, decides to jump down. The miracle worker comes off the roof and crashes to the ground. And on the ground, everyone around them is shouting, "Run." Our hero cries out to the girl, "Get out of here as fast as you can." But she still searches with her eyes for her mother. And her mom looks around anxiously at this point, not knowing where her daughter has gone. Meanwhile, the monster crawls straight up on the ground and bumps into the girl. He rushes to her to kill and eat her. And our hero, seeing this, rushes towards the beast. But he realizes he won't make it in time. As we see things going downhill, we notice the girl's mother, frozen in horror at the approaching threat. But before the monster can grab her, our hero's friend appears, rushing faster than the wind. He manages to snatch the girl from the clutches of danger. He asks Lebo to help him. Meanwhile, the monster lashes out and aims for him. Our hero is helped by another of his comrades, not left out. He begins to put his skills to use, pulls out a dagger and aptly throws it at the monster. The monster notices the flying weapon and dodges masterfully, ducking. Realizing the mistake in the speed of the enemy, the hero's friend realizes he will not have time to save himself. We see him in mortal danger, and he panics and calls out to Ryan, our hero. "When will you come to our aid, Liang?" he shouts. But our hero, using his new ability in water control, manages to show up in time. Concentrating the water into a fist, he lands a punch from the top, and his powerful blow splits the ground at the point of contact. We see cracks in the ground, and the monster is pinned down by a massive blow. Finally, after a long pursuit, our hero makes it. A drop of sweat drips from his face. To understand how this young man ended up in that place so precipitously, we'll have to go back just a few minutes. At that very moment our hero stood, seized with doubt, recognizing that he had little time to spare. And suddenly, as if fate itself had intervened, a jug filled to the brim with clear and cool water, as if it had appeared out of nowhere. When the young man looked at the container, he immediately realized that it was not simple moisture, but river water, which could give a drop of hope. Although it would hardly be enough, the man clearly understood. It was unacceptable to retreat now. It was not the time to give up when everything depended on him. So, without delay, he reaches his hand toward the water and calls upon the power in it to awaken, causing it to rise to meet his will. Long seconds of struggle against the indomitable element culminate in success. The subordinate force finally succumbs to his control. And now, as the water stream rises obediently, he directs it toward his enemies with a fury as if nature itself had sided with him. The young man's buddy can't hide his amazement at what he sees. And a moment later it's clear, the hero is turning towards him with the intention of attacking. He concentrates his strength, gathers all his resolve and strikes a precise, powerful blow, nailing the monster to the ground with all his fury. At just the right moment, the hero's companion appears, frozen in place from shock and stunned at how he managed to pull something like this off. He is unable to immediately give an explanation for what is happening. Everything is too fast, too incomprehensible. The young man gestures for his friend to take the little girl as far away from danger as possible, lest she be hurt in the flames of the fight. The one agrees, promising to return and assist as soon as he completes the rescue. As everyone leaves the battlefield, the man begins to wonder how his bitterest adversary is feeling out there. And suddenly everything stops. The ground is enveloped in thick smoke, hiding what is happening behind a dense veil. And then the hero notices a disturbing detail. The monster is no longer visible, vanished without a trace. And before he can do anything, he's right behind him, as stealthy and silent as the darkness itself. The monster raises a clawed paw as if about to deliver a fatal blow from behind his back. But the man manages to cover himself with his arms, repelling the onslaught of the enemy at the last moment, at the cost of pain and effort. Even as he defends himself, he instantly realizes something monstrously strong, frighteningly powerful stands before him. He realizes that a second mistake could be his last and can no longer be allowed to trap himself. Gathering himself, the young man begins to dodge the blows, dodging the blades each time as if dancing with death itself. And then, having found that very gap in the defense, the man decides it's time to strike back. He prepares a dash, gathers his strength, and delivers a powerful blow right into the monster's face without hesitating for a moment. Afterward, his buddy takes the girl to safety and returns to the battlefield with his friend. To support the hero in this final battle, not to retreat in a difficult moment, but to join the fight. Reflecting on what is happening, the man comes to the conclusion that he is able to immobilize the monster, if only for a few minutes. And then he asks to focus on the creature's joints, because random attacks won't help here. So the allies follow his instructions precisely, picking the right target so as not to miss the moment. And after gathering their strength, they simultaneously strike at a certain spot on the monster's body, piercing through its defenses. This is followed by a terrifying scream of pain, deafening and piercing, bursting out from the monster. When things subside a bit, the man casts a glance at his defeated foe, as if asking if this is enough to end it. Without waiting for an answer, he smashes his foot into its face with force, sending the monster far backward. He's already fallen on his shoulder blades, but he's still not completely defeated. Guy summons Afui, the very same giant centipede, his faithful beast hidden within. She pulls out of the guy's hand, straightening her body as if preparing for one last fight. Without wasting a second, she rushes forward and sinks her claws right into the neck of her enemy, giving him no chance to respond. The man notices that Shima's poison is dangerous, caustic, and powerful. This could be the deciding moment. The monster, gripped by searing pain, lets out a roar, shaking its head, trying to throw Shima off. And standing nearby are the bystanders who have just been watching all this time, hesitant to intervene. They understand. Getting involved in someone else's battle is like throwing yourself into a flame where there is nothing to save. And then the creature reappears. It turns toward them, a predatory fire flashing in its gaze. His intent is obvious, to tear apart those who happen to be around, who were weak and defenseless. The boys heal back in a daze, seeing the monster approaching with bloodlust. The man, catching this movement, realizes that he cannot allow such a loss of innocent life. He abruptly rips several sharp stakes out of the ground and throws it forcefully towards the monster, preventing it from approaching the gawkers. When the creature catches it on the fly, it's clear, a dagger is already embedded inside it. Then the monster lunges forward furiously, but the man meets it with a knee, putting all his strength into it. This blow proves to be so powerful that the ground beneath my feet cracks from the strain. The creature screams in pain, and the hero exhales quietly, as if acknowledging that perhaps it's over now. But the monster does not relent, growling about its immortality, uttering Li Yang's name as a reminder. When the battle subsides, the stunned residents below are left watching the battle anxiously. They whisper among themselves, not understanding. How can such a monster speak? When the surroundings become quiet again, the friends approach the hero, trying to see if Yesen will find peace. But the monster, remaining conscious, suddenly utters that it's just a gift for them all. And the man standing confidently in front of him replies that all of this is a blessing for the village of Yesen. He clutches the dagger tightly, lowering his gaze as if he realizes the importance of this sacrifice. Lian is going to present it to the goddess as a symbol of gratitude, as a most holy offering. And our story continues right after he defeats that monster and uses its head as a gift to the river god. After this gift, we again found people surrounding the remains of that monster. Surrounding him from the rear, we saw our hero watching. At the same time, he had to break through the first skin barrier in a short time to overpower this thing. The second was that his physical strength now far surpassed the martial artist's still at the initial level of the skin barrier. But most importantly, he managed to gain the favor of the river, allowing his innate ability to evolve to a very high level. After a while, the village elder appears and calls the healer to see if our hero is all right. As he gets closer, he notices our protagonist is becoming truly powerful. All he had to do was follow the right path and he would achieve everything he longed for. He thanks the healer, but immediately asks for his wound to be treated. The healer does so, but as he picks up the hero's cloak, he notices that the material is of very high quality. He even wonders what it is made of. It turned out to be a gift from his second oldest brother, a bear dog skin as strong as steel. The healer, in turn, understands, even in this armor he cannot resist strong opponents and must become even stronger. In addition, he was able to break through the skin barrier. And right at that moment, people around him come closer and wonder if he succeeded. Everyone is jubilant. Now he can bring glory to their village. Suddenly, a friend of our hero appears and notices that a true martial artist has just risen. Looking at him, he realizes there's no way to catch up with him. But then that uncle comes out of the crowd and states that this young man has become incredibly strong. He's afraid of revenge. However, he is interrupted by an old man asking if anyone knows who the monster that appeared here now is. Then he remarks that everyone should be wary. He adds that this monster has a name. It's called the mountain ghost, a creature that feeds on blood. It was probably attracted here by human bloodlust, but he can't confirm if there are others like it around Ang Sing. Although 3 ghosts have appeared at once, he suspects that something serious may soon happen in his village. Looking around curiously, one of them looks up and wonders if it looks familiar. As they take a closer look, they realize he looks a lot like Ban Jiang, that rogue old man from the beginning. Our hero doesn't hold back from looking at it either. The shape of this head is really similar to the one his grandfather had. Then he remembers everything he said earlier about alchemy and prosperity, and suddenly it comes to him. Alchemy in this world can be much more real. Creating a mountain ghost is where the real essence of what's going on is. But he calls the headman and says that the matter is very serious. He needs to go to Pyong County to report to his master about this whole suspicious mountain ghost business. What about the guy who messed with our hero back in the beginning? That was too sudden. He's going to deal with them, too. The very next day in the county, the wife of our hero's master appears and wonders what brings him here. After all, seeing him here is a great rarity. He bows and says he has an important conversation with the master. A little while later, we see the two of them again, nestled in a corner. They start talking. He reveals that the mountain ghost case may be related to Zhao Manor. And she, smiling, thinks him too shrewd. And no wonder, the master himself thinks highly of him and wants to have him around. But then he asks in surprise if she knew all this all along. She laughs and only then reassures him, "Take your time," for he has forgotten who his master is. It is none other than Yang Dong, the only tiger warrior found in these parts of Ping'an. At this moment, we see a tranquil temple in the mountains, the citadel of the Demon Mother sect. And so the 3 men head towards their meeting place. But as they approached, one of the 3 suddenly turns around. And barely turning around, he gets scared and falls to the ground. Lying on the ground, he points to the side and yells for everyone to look. They are about to be attacked. From afar, we see what's happening. A giant sword falls from the sky, pointing at the designated spot. The guy on the ground only has time to notice him getting closer. And it was our master who did it. He, Yang Dong, the owner of this land, appeared in person and demanded immediate surrender. And before anything happens there, the scene returns to the same place our hero was before. Here he is, in the dark of night. We see him practicing. He's hitting a piece of wood as hard as he can. And in doing so, notices that it's been 2 days since the lady told him to stay in the clan so he wouldn't interfere with his teacher's plans. She even gave him a 2,000 van bullion to cover his daily expenses. Soon we see how surprised he is by this great wealth. But thanks to the pilule of regenerative flesh, the young man's wounds healed much faster than usual. And the master and the lady suspect that the cult, the Mother Ghost cult, has staged a massive attack on the martial artists in the hall in order to manufacture more pills. That's why our hero is being held here for safety. After a while, he finishes his last daily workout. However, barely does he complete it as something quickly flies in his direction. But our hero, noticing this, quickly raises his hand and grabs the rock. And in just one move, he manages to throw it far to the side. The impact was so strong that it even cracked the stone fence. However, he then calls out, "Who's there?" It's not long before he realizes it was his older brother. He realizes that his guard was up. He used to think that no one was here except the protagonist. For when he found out, he rushed here to see his brother up close and to check on the training. He invites him to join the training, throws a spear in his direction, and his brother catches them on the fly. Since the latter was eager for a workout, he puts his best foot forward, fighting his younger brother without holding back. So he asks his brother to teach him new tricks and techniques. But as the duel begins, the brother picks up another orange he was holding in his hand and throws it up. After that, We see the hero learn to concentrate only on that falling orange. His brother then strikes with his spear in his direction, but the hero skillfully blocks the hold. The two continue to fight, and in the course of the battle our hero finds a gap. He's about to counterstrike with a spear, but his brother just smiles and immediately neutralizes his swing. He then ducks down, preventing the hero from landing a single blow. Realizing that this will accomplish nothing, the brother throws the spear aside. It's not until the hero picks him up that we see him go over his opponent's spear and ask him to speed up. The blonde-haired man congratulates his opponent on a nice move. The orange finally falling to the ground signifies the end of today's fight. After the fight, his brother notices that the hero has indeed broken through the skin barrier. With such speed, he turned out to be a man with a pattern of destiny that surprises our hero. He didn't elaborate on it then, for the master should be the one to teach and enlighten him in his time of need. The master will really train him and reveal all the secrets at the appropriate time. But they couldn't just watch, so they offered the hero to fight his brother again. He agreed, stood up, and the duel resumed. After a long fight, we find our hero completely exhausted. The fight has worn him out. Sitting down, his brother notices that the hero's words about Zhao Manor coincide well with his recent investigations, and it seems like something is thrown out of balance. Like someone wants to leave evidence, or he's just too suspicious. Therefore, the brother asks the hero to forget about it. By the way, since the hero has broken through the skin barrier, he has the right book. It's called the Steel Force Method. It is perfect for a new martial artist in the skin barrier stage. Martial arts techniques are divided into movements and techniques of strength. Force techniques are methods of channeling chi and blood, a deeper level of control. They can only be used by the top martial artists. His brother asks him to finish this book, and only then apply the techniques he will learn during his training with his younger brother. He thanks him for the book, and then asks him why he was looking for it. He almost forgot what he was going to talk about, for he had been sent to meet the hero because of a special weapon. All the preparations are finally complete. The hero rejoices. And the scene switches to another location. Here we see the chains at the bottom. Cult members find a new monster similar to the one that attacked the hero's village, and also the people captured and forced to go the right way. Meanwhile, one of the guards guarding the place is surprised. A girl of similar age to his daughter walked by, but he was called away by another guard and ordered to ignore it and move on. Moving forward, we see him inform the gentleman that he has found important ingredients. But there were exceptions, materials for a rarer experiment. Therefore, the process should be handled calmly so that everything develops as they intended. In the cell, meanwhile, the prisoners are worried. One of them asks what is going on, and another old man wakes up on the floor and coughs really hard. As soon as he opened his eyes and was able to speak normally, he began to call out to his young master. The scene shifts to a narrative of a spiritual weapon whose power depends on the character of the wielder. Flashy warriors are given devastating weapons. Calm personalities acquire calming artifacts. Each soul shapes the weapon through the prism of its inner self. The scene shifts to a blacksmith shop where a guy is shoving ingot into a furnace. Stage 1. Burn the metal and give it the desired strength in the furnace. The second is to combine it with the feather of the red bird so that the power is given to the metal. A shadow that balances between illusion and reality, able to penetrate the darkness and complete bloody rituals. It serves as the basis for the creation of spiritual weapon forms, merging with the intentions of the wielder. The guy asks the hero to come up and finish shaping the weapon with his spirit. The hero cuts his hands in an attempt to subdue the rebellious weapon. His efforts are not yet successful. He pours his blood on the artifact, and a tremendous force surges upward, covering the entire space in flames. Out of those flames, a phoenix is finally seen. The two heroes are shocked. At that moment, the smith grabs the spear stick and directs him straight into the flames to temper and combine with the power of the phoenix. The blade is starting to sparkle. The man watches in rage as the spirit of the weapon rejects the blood. Even after death, the artifact remains defiant. It gives more effort to fuse the bird's power, and accidentally overdid it. The spear pierced the stone furnace. The younger brother informs Lian Sure that the weapon is ready. The boy is surprised to lift the 54 kilograms artifact. The man studies every detail of the baton, feeling its magical aura. Now he can begin his training. He pulls the spear out of the ground admiringly and get into a stance. Fire energy spears fly around the protagonist. Lian sure feels a mystical connection with the spear, as if their souls have merged together. It was as if the weapon was breathing in time with his heart. His older brother suggests testing the artifact on wooden targets in the yard. The boy nods, ready to test the power of the new weapon. In the courtyard, he immediately performs a combo attack with his weapon. It surprises him more and more. The man praises the spear technique, but notes the lack of a name. Martial style requires completion through a personal name. Lian Shi, after pondering, chastised Fubo's weapon. From now on, every strike would carry a part of his will. Elder brothers who ensue suddenly appear side by side. Their visit is in connection with an errand from the master, of which no word has yet been spoken. The boy looks questioningly at Su, trying to understand the reason for his arrival. The tension of an unsolved mission hangs in the air. Su explains with a chuckle that taverns are ideal places to gather rumors. The noise of gossip masks important details. Younger brother shares a find. The lair of the ghost mother cult has been discovered. The information is obtained between cups of wine. My brother froze, watching the play of light on the flower petals. The fleeting beauty contrasted with the trials ahead. Crowds criticize the black outfits, considering them a challenge. The clothes do not reflect the beauty of the girls at the festival. In his mind, he is already imagining young Master Su being called to join the feast. He is happy to see what is happening and the girls around him. The elder brother describes the way to the temple of Fohua, where the enemies had taken refuge. The pursuit was easier than expected. The younger brother insists on an immediate assault. We can't delay. Every minute gives the enemy an advantage. The decision is made. The attack is scheduled for dawn. All participants nod, ready to carry out the order without delay. The mention of the little knife adds a note of unease. His involvement in the operation is off the table. The elder brother reminds Lian Shi of the inevitability of bloody battles. Running away from fate is futile, especially with the support of a master. The boy clutches his spear, realizing that the days of peace are coming to an end. The choice has been made, now it's time to act. However, the other hits Su on the head, saying that all his stories are nonsense. He asks the protagonist what he thinks about it. Lian Shi agrees to join tomorrow's attack. His voice is firm and his gaze is fixed on the horizon, where a challenge awaits. The scene shifts again to the caged monster, who is mumbling incoherently in chains. Manager Zheng cautiously follows someone through the darkened corridor. The footsteps echo in the silence, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. Zheng is reported on the condition of his monster son, noting his strength and appetite. The animal's owner abruptly interrupts him, protecting his personal space. The manager, hunched over, hastily retreats. His submissive gesture indicates fear of his superior's wrath. An elderly man looks longingly at his son, whose body has been distorted by an unknown transformation, sadness mixed with despair. His hand trembles, touching the changed skin. The silence between them is heavier than any words. Father asks how else to achieve immortality without sacrifice. His voice is cold, but his eyes are full of madness. The scene shifts to the mountains near the Fohua temple. A bunch of prisoners walking in chains and cult members standing next to them. A man yells at a subordinate in a rage, accusing him of incompetence. The conversation takes place among people, which is called ingredients or materials. A subordinate tries to calm down his superior by frantically waving his hands. Tension in the air is building because of the disrupted plans. The sectarian promises him to have fun with one of the girls, but only it will be on his conscience if something goes wrong. Lian Shi examines the location mentioned by Big Brother Su. His gaze glides over the details, trying to find clues. The heroes discuss how the help of the wizard and his pet Black Fong helped discover the markings. Without them, the search would have been impossible. Lian Shi listens to the odors, trusting the animal's keen sense of smell. The dog starts barking loudly. The guy asks the dog to be quiet. Stealth is important here. Lian looks around, trying to figure out where Su's older brother has disappeared to. His question goes unanswered, adding to his anxiety. The man's eyes stare into the void. The disappearance of his partner casts doubt on the success of the mission. Suddenly, we see a man draw the bowstring and an arrow. He fires an arrow with tremendous power and an aura trail. Here's Su's big brother. The man, in an attempt to calm the boss, is already grabbing the young girl and dragging her behind him. As suddenly only the glow of the aura remains instead, the arrow has reached its target. The force of the blow through the rapist aside breaking the wall, the girl was even frightened by such an escape. Another sectarian looked at this and started shouting. They're under attack. Everyone pay attention. At that time in the bush, the characters realize, this is Sue's signal, it's time for action. And the dog and the purple-haired man rush forward for the first stage of their plan of attack. The guy's running at high speed, literally cutting through the air. He bursts into the gate and breaks it down in full view of the multitude of sectarians. He then got into a fighting stance, the steam and aura around him burning the air and raising rocks. Now he's one-on-one with a bunch of sectarians armed with sharp blades and daggers. Lianshi freezes, stunned by the power of the galloping horse reality warrior. His eyes widen, assessing the scale of his ally's strength. The older brother sharply pushes the boy forward, reminding him to act. Every movement must now be precise and quick. Violet strikes first and immediately punches the cloaked man through and through. Two men from behind try to attack him from behind and stab him to death. But suddenly 2 arrows with a yellow aura slam into their backs. The kid thanks the archer on the roof for keeping him alive. Sue looks at him with a smile, marveling at his abilities and delighted at his skill. Now the protagonist has already arrived, which managed to defeat the 2 sectarians with his new weapon. He also had his other brother with him, who also punched a couple of baddies. The sectarians unite to surround the GG and prevent him from using his spear. But he bypasses them with ease and takes out one by one the sectarian with his unique combo attack. 3 more freaks coming his way is no problem for him. With one blow, he slits the throats of 3 and goes on to help his friends. The man points to the building, ordering them to find the hostages. His gesture is emphatic, delay is fatal. Lianshi nods, clutching the hilt of his spear. Saving the innocent will be the first step to defeating the enemy's lair. The underground passage beneath the base is filled with the noise of warriors preparing for battle. The order to mobilize sounds like the last frontier before the battle. The man in the corner whispers the end of his suffering. His eyes are empty, as if his soul has already left his body. The boy remembers the corpses in the temple, including the children. The thought of his daughter makes him shudder at the horror of what he has done. Guilt clutches his throat tighter than enemy chains. Another young sectarian approaches him, but he quickly realizes something's wrong. But that doesn't help him. The distraught father gets up and slits the little sectarian's throat. The man vows to save the family, blaming Zhao Hongyuan and Zheng Xiang for the tragedy. His fists are clenched until his knuckles turn white. The scene changes and the head Zheng criticizes the weakness of the group subordinate to Yang Dongxiang. Humiliation is mixed with anger in the eyes of the men. The boy lowers his head, but his posture shows a willingness to prove otherwise. The enemy's doubts will become his weapon. The order to release the mountain ghosts and scatter them over the hill sounds like a desperate tactic. Chaos will be the shield. The subordinate mutters about Zhao Hongyuan's trap, but complies with the order. His steps are slowed by fear of the consequences. The man looks at the tunnel, realizing that he has become a pawn in someone else's game. It's too late to flee. The only thing left to do is fight. But he remembers his monster of a son and realizes it's the perfect opportunity. Zheng decides to use the underground path to counterattack. His plan is risky, but he has no other choice. Lianshi examines the location mentioned by Big Brother Sue. His gaze glides over the details, trying to find clues. The group completes their reconnaissance, checking the time of their partner's return. The air is saturated with the iron odor of blood, alerting everyone. Violet squints, sensing an unseen threat. His instincts tell him the danger is closer than it seems. Suddenly, we get a glimpse of some creature's gaze among the ruins and bodies. Guy points to the hidden shadows of the gorge, suggesting the presence of captives. Every stone here may hide a secret. He walks up and wonders. The gates of a hidden tunnel? Black Fawn growls, picking up a presence in the tunnel. Lianshi freezes, listening to the pet's signals. The man opens the gate with his powerful arms. The darkness inside feels like breathing, promising an encounter with the unknown. As soon as he gets inside, the door slams shut behind him. It's kind of like there is only a mysterious void ahead of him. The Mountain Purge, Demon Hunt mission pops up on the screen. Guy rereads the mention of the River Lord in bewilderment. Perhaps the system gives the key to defeating enemies. The man shrugs, accepting the challenge. The dog suddenly makes another woofing sound. Dozens of mountain ghosts surround the group. Their shadows flicker in the mist, threatening to outnumber them. Lianshi clenched his spear, preparing to fight. Each demon is just a stepping stone to the main goal. He knocks the spear to the floor and realizes that's where it all starts. Realizing the stalemate, the guy takes up the fight. His smile shows his willingness to fight to the end. Lianshi cast aside his doubts, ready to begin the decisive fight. His body, strengthened by training with Zed, radiates confidence. The monster rushes forward and prepares to attack. Lianshi makes a forward kick, testing his new skills. The demon immediately turned into a flatbread by the wall. The man rushes to the attack, leaving his enemies no chance to prepare. The initiative is now in his hands. Lianshi throws the spear forward using speed and precision. Each movement is calculated to the millimeter, and it goes straight in, killing another monster through and through. The system notifies progress too. The guy smiles at his skill and starts scoring points in the nicest way possible. Mission progress increases from 4 to 6. The numbers blink to indicate the stages of work completed. Lianshi nods, assessing the distance traveled. The only thing left to do was to finish what he had started. The guy shakes himself up, ready for round 2. His eyes burn with determination. The man picks up his weapon without taking his eyes off his opponent. Hundreds of monsters run towards him, and he's ready to meet them with his legendary spear. The scene changes, and we see a monster with a spear in its chest come flying out of the passageway. He is followed by a mister who is trying to complete this mission cleanly and quickly. Suddenly, 2 monsters appear very close in front of his face at once. He quickly grabs the spear by the hilt. Progress gets 2 points at once. Lianshi freezes, unable to believe that the battle has come to an end. The man lowers his spear, his breathing heavy. The silence after the storm seems ominous. An old man appears from the shadows, shocking the boy with his presence. His mocking tone is furious. Manjung looks at the former fisherman with disdain. Even outcasts are capable of doing unexpected things. Lianshi appears at the critical moment, holding the poor man in his arms. The protagonist's gaze is fixed on Lu Zhongsan, the father of Lu's mentor, whose name evokes excitement. Zhang Xiang grins as he recognizes the approach of his older brothers. His posture expresses defiance, as if he is already anticipating the outcome of the clash. The boy clutches his weapon, ready to go on the attack. Every word of the enemy only spurs his determination. Suddenly something smashes through the wall behind the protagonist. He's about to shit his pants from it. It turns out to be a huge monster like the one that Mr. Gaga has already defeated at the festival, only this one is obviously stronger than the pack. He doesn't realize what a horror this is. 2 adversaries converge in a final battle. Their gazes cross like blades, heralding the final showdown. Zhang laughs at Gigi, taking advantage of the enemy's moment of weakness. The outcome of the battle now depends on speed and cunning. The scene is transported back in time to the same place again. The older brother and the purple one are running fast in the forest. Su discusses with his companions the weakness of the mountain ghosts encountered. They are all in the early stages of development. The man points to a hidden threat, a senior ghost of the galloping horse reality level. Its power surpasses anything previously seen. The scene switches to GH and Guy recognizes that this is the most dangerous situation in all his wanderings. The risk of death seems inevitable. A huge and strong monster stands right in front of him and scares him with its appearance. A massive ghost with power, one of his arms the size of a kid, his size inspires terror. Lianshi assesses the distance to the opponent. Even a step forward could be the last mistake. The man rejects the idea of surrender. His battle-scarred life is too valuable to surrender. The boy clutches his weapon, preparing to fight. The smile on his face shows that he is ready to fight to the end. Lianshi recalls the years of hardship that have hardened his spirit. Danger is now just a part of the journey, not an obstacle. A man takes a step forward, ignoring fear. Each challenge makes him stronger. Childhood fears pale before the current threat. The boy laughs at his own anxiety, gaining determination. Lianshi raises a spear, pointing the tip towards the ghost. The fight will be the test of his life. The monster almost hit Mr. G, but he ducked like Neo from the Matrix. Then the monster strikes again, and now the kid coolly dodges with a somersault. But there's a setback. The monster's fist did hit the protagonist. What threw him far back was the only thing that helped him was that spear. Now the monster attacks the guy again with a strong attack with his huge arm. But Lian deftly jumps up and his fist doesn't touch him, but smashes the ground beneath him. The man looks at Lianshi with disdain, marveling at his experience. Only half a year of training is too little for such an ordeal. Now it's getting serious. They both run at each other preparing to kill their opponent. The opponent's father points at Lianshi, demanding his death. The gesture is filled with cold hatred and thirst for revenge. The man clutches his spear, ready to finally kill the monster with a single blow. The hero's fate hangs in the balance. It strikes and slashes along the length of the arm, which is sure to do damage to this monster. But the monster still manages to wade in and strike the protagonist. The opponent laughs, thinking Lianshi is too weak to confront. His posture expresses absolute confidence in victory. The boy grits his teeth, ignoring the pain. Every drop of blood becomes fuel for his will. The system announces the completion of the mountain cleaning task. Lianshi looks at the bonuses received, unable to believe his luck. The grace of the River Lord changes the rules of the game. The guy coughs, but smiles, realizing the randomness of luck. His words about strength and luck sound like a challenge to fate. The man rises from his knees, feeling a rush of new strength. Now he is ready to turn chance into victory. But suddenly he finds himself in some dimension. Lianshi regains consciousness in an unfamiliar place, unable to move his limbs. Panic grows, but outwardly he keeps his composure. The man's eyes are wide open, trying to see the details of his surroundings. His body felt as if it were shackled by invisible chains, depriving him of freedom of action. It's like a huge blue dragon floating past him. A voice from the void rebukes the protagonist, wondering if he will regret it. Unexplained symbols flicker, creating an atmosphere of surrealism. Guy ignores the threats, focusing on finding a way out. Every word from the enemy only fuels his determination. An unknown adversary declares himself Lord of the Rivers. He threatens death for breaking the laws. His figure disappears into the fog. The boy is surprised to realize that he has been absorbed into the body of the River Lord. His attempts to regain control have been unsuccessful so far. The dragon screams into the void, demanding forgiveness. The echoes return only his own voice, intensifying his despair. And he opens his mouth and rushes down to kill the Lord of the Rivers. Guy watches the destructive force. Every movement intensifies the chaos around him. The technique, called Dragon Slash, is activated against Lianshi's will. Energy rushed out of his hands like an uncontrollable stream. The inscription dragons slash flashes with a bloody light. The technique is clearly linked to ancient rituals forgotten by the ages. Suddenly, everything dissolves, and the enemy laughs at the guy's weak skills, finding his attempts laughable. His confidence borders on arrogance. A man beats his chest and talks about how he didn't do anything wrong. The enemy's father cries out injustice, accusing everyone of blindness. The son is the only thing he has. His rage is directed at Zhaohong Yuan and the world at large. He has fought for so many years for the place of clan leader. He orders his son to kill the protagonist, and he's like a stupid monster waving his huge arms around ready to strike down. But suddenly the hero's eyes start to glow. Everything's blowing up, throwing even a monster back a few dozen meters. Father and monster's son in shock don't understand. What is this? And here we see a hero with flying hair and with glowing eyes. He stood up with his spear fully intact and cast the seal, preparing for another battle. The scene changes. An early winter dawn floods the valley with cold light. Lianshi listens to the master's explanation about the legendary power of the forge and the transcendent rainbow. The master shrugs, acknowledging that no one has seen these powers in person. Myths and rumors are the only sources of information, but the people called them divine ways. Our hero has just mastered them, and now all he has to do is unleash his power to kill his enemies. He points his hand with a blue aura at them. The dragon slashing technique activates with a violent rumble and shockwave. Its name sounds like a verdict on your opponents. The guy takes a step back, feeling threatened by the reception. They go into some kind of dimension. An unknown creature or object shocks the group. Its shape distorts, as if breaking the laws of physics. Lu's father comes to his senses and he thinks he knows where they are. Someone in the crowd accuses Lianshi of cheating, demanding his death. The tension is reaching a fever pitch. The monster rushed forward without waiting for an explanation. The guy didn't move at all. He silently begins twirling his spear with some sort of divine power. Suddenly, everything is illuminated by a flash of light and aura, and only the silhouette of a monster with a pierced chest is visible, and a man standing very close to his fist. The monster understands nothing and stands at a loss. The man laughs and says he knew it. The guy's not capable of anything but cheating. However, the expression on his face changes, and he doesn't understand. What is happening now? The monster's body suddenly began to dissolve in the air like ink in water. The creature's growl merges with the cry of "my son," as it dissolves into thin air. The last thing the monster manages to say before he dies are just words, "Dad," and he disappeared before he could hug his beloved father. The old man freezes in place, trying to realize what has happened. He falls to his knees and starts sobbing. Now there's nothing left in his life that he loved. In front of him, he sees Lianshi fall down from using too much strength. He sprawled on the ground and blood began to pool around his body. The opponent blames Lianshi for all the troubles, threatening to kill him. His voice trembles with rage. But there's fear in his eyes as his footsteps approach. Someone has broken in on them. The older brothers find the younger apprentice in the ruined hall. Their faces are contorted with shock at the chaos they have seen. Lianshi lies unconscious, and around him are the signs of a brutal fight. The brothers' questions remain unanswered. Time passes and Man grabs his younger brother's body, leaving the danger zone in a hurry. The return for secrets will have to be postponed. Guy surveys the battlefield, realizing that victory is impossible. Escape is the only chance to regroup. The old one comes to his senses, noticing that his opponents have disappeared. A moment of silence gives a head start for action. The boy crawls toward the exit, ignoring the pain. Now it's important to find allies before another attack. Suddenly, a man appears from behind the runner and calls Zheng by name, and he is shocked by it. It turns out to be a cult traitor, and he grabs Zheng Xiang in a rage, demanding his family back. The man averts his gaze, avoiding a direct answer. Fear of the hero's anger makes him tremble. Zheng Xiang declares himself the chief steward, and says that the servant doesn't need to communicate with him like that. He presses him against the wall, repeating the question about family. Each word sounds like a final warning. The man shrugs, saying the family could have been victimized by mountain ghosts. His indifference infuriates the hero, and he's already chuckling at the cult servant's grief. With rage, the man's face loses its human form and turns into a strange mess. He swings his sword to kill the cult leader. He sends the chapter to hell with a crushing blow, leaving no chance for salvation. The boy strikes again, watching his enemy disappear into the darkness. The sentence has been pronounced, now only hell can cleanse him of his sins. The man's hand shook and the blood gushed more and more. The boy leaves the room with the corpse. Even in the pitch darkness, he believes all is not lost. His family may be safe,